So good evening, everybody. Good evening. I'd bang my gavel, but my gavel is missing. Good evening and welcome everyone to this special meeting of Council. This meeting is called for the specific purpose to consider the 2015 budget for the City of Brampton. Under Council's meeting rules, no other business can be considered at this special meeting, and all members of Council are present this evening. Could I just remind everybody in the audience to make sure that, and at this table, to ensure all your cell phones and all your electronic devices are turned off or placed in a non-audible mode during the course of the meeting. We have a motion moved by Councillor Willens and seconded by Councillor Bowman that the agenda for the special council meeting of April 8th be approved as followed, and adding item D1, which is a presentation by Peter Honeyborn, the Executive Director of Finance, Treasurer, entitled Recommendations to Council from Budget Committee 2015 Deliberations, and E1, a report from Peter Honeyborn, the Executive Director of Finance, Treasurer, regarding the 2015 operating and capital budget. And Mr. Clerk, can you review the additional related materials that are provided to Council in regards to this special meeting?
Through you, Mayor Jeffrey, to members of Council and to the public in the audience this evening, the additional materials that were distributed prior to the meeting include item F1, which are recommendations from the Budget Committee from its March 30th, 31st, April 1st, and April 2nd meeting. There is also an additional report, item E2, from Brian Rutherford in regard to the Powerade Center, basketball, floor, and city-funded capital items. As well, a number of delegation requests have been received for this evening's meeting. The delegations that have been received include the following. Number 1, Bruce Marshall, Brampton resident. Number 2, Jamie Holton, minister, lead pastor, North Bramalea United Church. Number 3, Peter Bailey, Brampton resident. Number 4, Angela Johnson, president, Carabram. Number 5, Scott Anderson, treasurer, Brampton Concert Band. Number 6, Marnie Richards, executive director, Brampton Arts Council. Number 7, Christopher Thompson, Brampton resident. Number 8, Doug Bryden, co-chair, Citizens for a Better Brampton. And number 9, Janet Atherley, Brampton resident. In addition, there are 2 pieces of correspondence that have been filed for this meeting. One piece of correspondence from David Harmsworth, president, Brampton Concert Band, dated April 7th, 2015. And 2 emails from George Startup, Brampton resident, dated April 7th, 2015.
Okay, Council, all those in favor of the motion with those additional items? All those opposed? That's carried. We're at the point of our agenda that deals with the declarations of interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act. Does any member have a declaration of pecuniary interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act for any matter to be considered on today's agenda? Councillor Bowman.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I need to declare a conflict for the Library Board due to a contract that was in place prior to election and still ongoing, and the community fundraising requests for Carabram.
Got that, Mr. Clerk? Councillor Miles.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to declare conflict of interest on the community grant for Brampton Safe City Association, as the executive director is my husband, and also for the non-union portion, compensation portion of the transit budget, as my daughter works for Brampton Transit.
Thank you. Councillor Fortini.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm declaring for my daughter that works for non-union part-time for the City of Brampton, Jacuzzi Park.
You have that, Mr. Clerk? Councillor Gibson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to declare a conflict on the transit union compensation portion of the budget, as my son works for transit.
Mr. Clerk, I also would like to declare a conflict, as my son is an employee in the transit department. I think that it concludes, so the clerk is noting this for our minutes. So we're at the portion of our delegations. Before we as council consider the 2015 budget and hear from the public on this matter, I would like to ask Mr. Peter Honeyborn, Treasurer and Executive Director of Finance, to please come forward and provide a short presentation this evening about the 2015 budget recommendations. After Mr. Honeyborn's presentation, I will make a few remarks, and I would ask council that we refrain from asking questions at that point, and we proceed to hear from the public through the delegation. After hearing from the public, council can then ask its questions, and we can consider the 2015 budget. Mr. Honeyborn, would you please come forward with your presentation? Welcome, and I understand there are copies of your slides, which is item D1, have been provided to each member at their desks, and extra copies are available for the public. We also have the 2 staff reports that I spoke of earlier. That's item E1, the 2015 operating and capital budget, and item E2, a report from Public Services with regards to the Powerade basketball floor and the city-funded capital items, which was distributed to members at the start of the meeting in response to a request from Budget Committee through recommendation. The city will be publishing Mr. Honeyborn's slides and these reports on the city's website after the meeting. Mr. Honeyborn.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and councillors. Last week, all members of council participated in 4 intensive days of budget deliberations. And tonight, City Council will be considering and voting on the budget recommendations that resulted from those Budget Committee meetings last week. There are many recommendations for City Council to consider tonight. However, my presentation will address some of the highlights. As a result of the Budget Committee deliberations last week, Budget Committee has recommended a 2% dedicated infrastructure levy. It recommended a 4.07% increase in the city's budget for day-to-day operations and a $107.1 million capital budget, with workshops to be scheduled in June and July to develop a multi-year capital budget. Budget Committee also recommended permanently revoking the 1/3 tax-free status for the mayor and all councillors, and implementing a salary freeze for all non-union staff with an estimated budget savings of $1.5 million in 2015. Budget Committee also recommended that a review of grants and subsidies provided to community groups be conducted as a result, groups must resubmit their grant request for consideration under a new process to be implemented this year. Budget Committee recommended that the proposed budgets for departments be approved as amended and that procedural changes be implemented with respect to international business development and marketing plan travel, such that all travel outside Ontario must be approved by City Council. The recommended budget for 2015 will result in an increased net requirement of $14,750,000 for day-to-day operations and an incremental investment of $7,247,000 in our infrastructure to address the need to maintain it in a state of good repair. This slide shows the net requirements for each department and the impact on the tax bill. The city incurs many types of expenses in order to deliver our municipal services. Many of the city's services, such as transit, the fire department, recreation, roads, parks, and buildings maintenance, are labor intensive, with almost 60% of the city's budget devoted to salaries, wages, and benefits. The remainder of the expenses are quite varied and include contracted services, such as our contracted snow plowing, utilities and fuel costs, grants and subsidies, and more. And this slide provides a good breakdown of these various types of costs. The city's recommended budget for 2015, combined with the requirements for the region of Peel, the 4 school boards, and the hospital levy, will result in a total tax levy of $4,238 for the average home in Brampton, assessed at $381,000. So to recap, the combined impact of the 2015 budgets of the City of Brampton and the Region of Peel on the property tax bill will be 2.12% for day-to-day operations, which is the same as inflation. Investments in infrastructure will add an additional 1.26% to the tax bill for the City of Brampton and the Region of Peel combined, for a total increase on the tax bill of 3.38%. Starting with the 2015 capital budget, we move to a capital contracting budgeting method for preparing our capital budgets. No longer will we budget for the full amount of a project, but rather we will budget for contracts that we expect to issue in the budget year. The 2015 capital budget of $107.1 million is much lower than previous years, and this will enable staff to focus on delivering projects that were approved in previous year's capital budgets as well as the 2015 capital budget. And we can see from this slide that the majority of the capital work to be undertaken will be undertaken by the Public Services Department and the Planning and Infrastructure Services Department. Funding for the 2015 capital budget will be provided by a number of sources. Most notably, 35% will be funded from property taxes, 26% will be provided by gas taxes from the federal government, 10% will be provided from specific grants from the federal and provincial governments for our Zoom bus rapid transit program, and 20% will be funded by development charges, with the balance of funding provided from other sources as shown on this chart. Madam Mayor, that concludes my brief presentation for this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Honeyborn. So the budget we're debating this evening is the culmination of weeks of intensive effort by our city staff and by council, which was informed by the most extensive community outreach our city has ever initiated. Let's Connect Budget 2015 engaged close to 20,000 residents through 5 town halls, several television and radio call-in shows, an online survey, a budget allocator tool, and a telephone service satisfaction survey. Last week, Council held 4 days of public budget deliberations and heard deputations from various community groups and local associations. Throughout the election and since taking office, I have maintained that the city's finances were not as rosy or as debt-free as we had been led to believe by the previous administration. The Auditor General, Jim McCarter's report red flagged 3 specific areas that required our immediate attention. The first being his recommendation to take the steps necessary to maintain our infrastructure assets. Secondly, we needed to better manage our operating expenses, and he also recommended we find a better way to communicate with our residents. This budget, I believe, begins to address these issues in a substantive and meaningful way. Budgets are about choices, and unfortunately, our city has few options due to the fact that our financial flexibility and reserves have diminished over the last 5 to 10 years. Mr. McCarter predicted we would have to make a number of difficult decisions, not only during this budget cycle, but in future years in order to weather the financial storm clouds on the horizon. Mr. McCarter recommended we take immediate action to address the demands of our city's aging and growing infrastructure. Our staff highlighted in the 2015 capital outlook that we are currently facing a $1.2 billion accumulated infrastructure gap. In order to address our existing aging infrastructure and the value and the importance of keeping it in a good state of repair, this council supported a 2% infrastructure levy to help address the infrastructure needs of our community now and into the future. The Auditor General's report also cautioned us that we needed to better manage our operating expenses. The City of Brampton is fortunate to have a dedicated, committed, and talented pool of employees, but the fact that 2/3 of every dollar spent on city operations goes to pay salaries and benefits is unsustainable. Following our own lead of salary restraint, this council brought forward a non-unionized employee wage freeze that will save our city an estimated $1.5 million. As I stated earlier, this year's budget consultation reached close to 20,000 residents. What I came away with, following all those telephone town halls and the call-in shows, is that few individuals know or are following what decisions are being made at City Hall around our service levels. That disconnect is as a result of a combination of factors, including the prevalence of social media for the younger generation, a retention by new Canadians of their ancestral language, and the decline of traditional media. During the election, I and many of my colleagues campaigned on an accessible, open, and transparent City Hall. One of my goals is ensuring that all Bramptonians are fully apprised of developments at City Hall. Many cities provide enhanced language services to their citizens, and Brampton should be no different. As the auditor's report mentioned, Brampton is one of the few cities in Canada where almost half of our residents' mother tongue is neither English nor French. Mr. McCarter states the obvious, that getting our message out only in English is not good enough. In his report, Mr. McCarter recommended we seek additional ways of communicating to all of our residents, such as social media, television, and the internet. In order to address this gap, our Corporate Communications Department brought forward a plan to expand our current communication service levels by providing the capabilities to communicate with all the members of our community through digital and traditional media channels. As I stated at the beginning, budgets are about choices, and one of the areas we actually found strong consensus was around how we support our seniors. Brampton seniors spoke loud and clear during the election and during budget deliberations. They like and appreciate the $1 Seniors Brampton Transit fare, which we will continue to offer. We understand that most seniors are on fixed incomes, and any assistance with their travel costs goes a long way in helping them retain their independence. As well, we heard that the cost to access city-run recreational programs and facilities has become a concern. This budget provides something we believe is unique to Brampton and meaningful to our seniors: free access to rooms during non-prime time hours for those seniors that are part of an affiliated group. Budgets are about choices and competing needs throughout our community. This has not been an easy process, and we have had some spirited debates about some of our decisions. This budget, I believe, achieves a balance between the priorities of our community and a long-term, sustainable, and fiscally responsible approach to running our city. Before I close, I want, on behalf of my colleagues and I, to thank all of our staff for all the additional work and the long evenings they have put in to provide us with the materials we need in order to help us make informed decisions on behalf of our residents. Thank you to our staff. So the next part of our agenda is that we're going to proceed with delegations before council gets a chance to ask her questions on the consideration of the budget. Please note that the public notice regarding this meeting was advertised on the city's website, throughout the city's community engagement activities on the 2015 budget, and was published in the Brampton Guardian on March 19th, 26th. As the clerk mentioned, we have numerous delegations, and I will call each delegation in order. If other persons are here tonight who wish to speak to council about this budget report, I ask you to come forward after I've called the last delegation, since this is a designated time at this meeting to hear your comments about our budget. For all public delegations this evening, you will be given 5 minutes to speak. This is to ensure that everyone who wants to speak will get a chance to address council. The clock will be running in front of you at the podium just to let you know how much time you've used. And when you do come forward, please state your name for the public record. Our first delegation is Mr. Bruce Marshall. Could you come down? Sure. Go.
Delegations without question or comment. So any debate on
Afterwards.
the grants?
We're going to let all the delegations speak, and then that debate will happen
Okay,
afterwards.
thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you so much. My name is Bruce Marshall, Madam Mayor, members of council. I'm here tonight to speak to the funding uncertainty to all of the community groups, which are the fabric of Brampton. I understand that this process has been very tough for council. You've put in a lot of hours, but I will speak my mind on this issue. I come this evening not as a representative of a group seeking funding, hat in hand, humbly beseeching the council for money. I'm not looking for what might seem to be characterized by some people as a handout. I'm here rather as a concerned taxpayer to decry the absence of leadership in this group, a group that apparently, for the purposes of base politics, is on the cusp of destroying much that is good about Brampton. A group that seems to know the cost of everything and the value of nothing. A group for whom the dollar is master, not the betterment of the community. A few weeks ago, I addressed some of you and said that what was really needed in this budget process was moral courage to do the right thing and make investments in these worthy groups that make Brampton better. Apparently, there is none of that courage here. Grants. Some of an extreme right-wing libertarian frame of mind view these as handouts, of welfare, if you will. And we all know what a bad word welfare is. However, grants have a rich history. They go back hundreds of years when monarchs would make grants for worthy causes and projects. They did this not to give handouts, but rather to better the societies they were trying to build. Grant giving was part of community leadership. It was part of vision. It appears that this kind of community leadership and vision has died in Brampton. And this council are the killers. As all of these groups that make Brampton better potentially lie in ruins in these budget deliberations, there is yet some small leadership that you can provide. You can provide these groups with the kind of transitional funding they need so that some of them can survive for the betterment of our community. As a taxpayer looking for leadership where I see none, I appeal to you to at least show this little bit of leadership. Salvage something from the destruction you may very well have wrought. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Marshall. Mr. Holton. Jamie Holton. Welcome.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jamie Holtham. I'm the lead minister at North Bramley United Church and involved in the community in a variety of different ways. I also come tonight really as a citizen of this great city, and I also want to say thank you for the long hours and the work that you're putting in what is obviously very difficult decisions, as Madam Mayor has indicated that we have to make here. I'm coming to show support tonight for the community groups, specifically Brampton Safe City, and I just would like to share a few ways that I see Brampton Safe City bringing value to our community in what I think is fairly unique and very significant ways. The first would be their proactive leadership around creating a safe community. We've seen that in our work in partnering with Brampton Safe City to create a neighborhood center in the Argland community called The Journey, and there has been a transformation in that neighborhood over the last 18 months that wouldn't have happened without Brampton Safe City. I really believe in the vision to take that to other neighborhoods throughout our city as well. The second would be they work collaboratively with other agencies and hundreds of local citizens. It's a very simple project called Great Neighborhoods, and there are neighborhoods all across the city that are throwing parties on their streets because of the leadership of Brampton Safe City. I live on a street where we've done that, and I have to tell you, it's changed our street, that we know each other, we care about each other, and we support each other in a way that we wouldn't have, and we wouldn't have done it without Brampton Safe City, because it takes leadership to make even something as simple as that happen. The third way would be that they are doing work that I don't see anyone else doing. Getting into the schools and teaching hundreds and thousands of young people the reality of distracted driving and what it's doing as far as fatalities in car accidents these days is a very significant piece of work that I don't see anyone else doing. I could go on and on about what Brampton Safe City is doing. I think there's some friends here that could probably say the same behind me. But what is as important as anything in my mind isn't just what Brampton Safe City does, but who they are. They have really become a fabric of our community, and sometimes we don't realize how good something is until it's not there. And I would just not want to see Brampton Safe City not be there because of funding. So I ask that we consider treating fairly and respectfully all of the community groups, but especially Brampton Safe City. If it was up to me, and I know that it's not, I would propose a multi-year commitment to Brampton Safe City to ensure that the good work that they're doing continues. But I would at least ask at a minimum that there's transition funding so that it can continue and have a chance. I want to say thanks again for your leadership. I know that you work hard, you make some incredible, difficult decisions. We and many of us, we're praying for you, for your discernment, for your wisdom, for your cohesiveness as a team. Thank you for allowing me to bring this forward tonight.
Thank you. Mr. Bailey. Peter Bailey. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Madam Mayor, councilors, staff. I'll get right into this because a lot of this you've seen before, so I don't want to waste too much of your time. So let me just, don't mind, just take some space there. There was an article in the Brampton Guardian on January 29th by Peter Crisoni, and he had a quote from you, Madam Mayor, saying, "Council wants residents to have confidence in the services this city delivers." And in the city, residents were last surveyed in 2007. The city conducted a forum research survey and on behalf of the city, and that this survey would provide the benchmark of residents' opinions regarding city services. So on that note, I'd like to show you just, well, and besides, the survey would be accessible in English and French and also 10 other languages. So they did reach out to the wider community. So just quickly on this slide here, it's the question is at the bottom, in your opinion, what is the single most important problem facing Brampton today? And at the very top was traffic in city streets, and as you work down, there's taxes, transit. And when you get down a bit to the 2% area, you'll see diversity cultures not being integrated, along with crime and a few other things. So that issue, especially the diversity in culture, is what I'm here to talk about. It isn't a high priority with this slide. And this is from the Forum Research Survey. On this, and the councillors have all seen this, so I don't have to explain, the rationale behind all these. And Mr. Cuttajar's staff did a beautiful job explaining this earlier. But if you look on the top right-hand corner, it's sort of the grayish areas. There's a letter D, number 6, multilingual services. And this graph next, it was also explained to everyone in council here last week. It places, if you look over the left-hand corner around the middle, you see the letter D6. And then in this quadrant, and this was explained to you all so you understand it. I'm not going to do it on behalf of everyone in the room here. But it shows D6, which is that issue, as being relatively unimportant and also on the left side of secondary strength. So again, the most important issues would be in the middle of this graph, and D6 is way out to the left there. This is an interesting one too. Please name one service you would most like to see reduced. And at the very top is fewer employees at City Hall, executive employees, and politicians as being the number one service citizens of Brampton would like to see reduced. And you work the way down to transit costs, reduced taxes, of course, and coming in at 9% again is this diversity and multicultural services. So again, it's not one of these things that is on the community's mind. In this graph, in this slide here, the question is, in the future, how would you like to hear about the City of Brampton news, programs, plans, and events? And number 1 was newspaper ads in English at 47%. And then it works down the website, which would be a city website, which is in English, social media, currently in English, mobile apps, I'm sure they all come across in English. And at the very, very bottom, at 8%, would be ethnic media ads in non-English newspaper, radio, and TV. Very, very low number. This is from Mr. Cuttajar's report, and it was under new facilities and services, and I was looking for what the new facility was, but this spells out the total cost of the corporate ethnic media program, and it shows at $682,000. This was under scenario 1 of the budget. It's a high number, but it is what it is, and that's what it's showing. This one here shows the percentage, I believe, and Mr. Cuttajar can correct me if I'm wrong, but it shows the salaries within this department as being 72.6%, which I believe is an increase from last year's budget, and far surpasses the 59% that Chief Honeyborn showed earlier as being the sort of the the benchmark for the salaries and overall in the city, so quite high. And this final slide is from scenario 2 of the budget, but it's similar to scenario 1. So there's scenario 1, 682,000. Scenario 2, 682,000. So what I'm trying to say here is that it's a huge cost that seems to be put on the backs of the taxpayers, and apparently the taxpayers aren't even asking for this.
Mr. Bailey, you've exceeded your time. Can you just summarize, please?
This is my summary right here. A good friend of mine contacted me today, and she's a financial advisor. And she told me, she says, we were talking about this, and she says, oh, this is very common amongst the people she has, her clients. She says, a lot of people go out and they spend more money than what they actually have. She says she has one particular client that has no money in the bank. She's in debt. Her credit cards are maxed out, but she runs out and purchases a Louis Vuitton handbag. And just because she had to have it, felt she had to have it. And in fact, she had 5 or 6 handbags at home that were just fine. So I'm saying what we're asking for here is like a Louis Vuitton handbag, and I don't think this city needs it at this time.
Thank you, Mr.
So,
Bailey.
thank you very much.
Angela Johnson? Welcome.
Madam Mayor, members of council, senior management team, staff, those in attendance here and at home, good evening. My name is Angela Johnson, president of Carbram, Brampton's Multicultural Festival, which has been a part of our city for the past 32 years. As you know, Carbram is a festival dedicated to the preservation, development, and promotion of the cultural heritage of the diverse ethnic communities in our city. Our mandate matches many of the strategic goals of this municipality, namely to educate Bramptonians about the cultures that they live and work with every day. The festival takes place the second weekend of July, which this year coincides with a boom in the number of tourists present in the GTA due to the Pan Am Games. Last week we presented our funding request to you, and we were very grateful for the show of support this council made to Carbram, with your resolution to continue to work with our teams to ensure a successful festival and to explore opportunities to find a one-stop facility to host the festival. We appreciate your commitment to assist Carbram with promotion through existing sources of social media and work with our many volunteers to develop a long-term sustainable model for the future. We're in the process of revamping Carbram to enhance the attendee experience. For example, by working to consolidate the pavilions into as few locations as possible. This also benefits the festival as it improves our operations efficiency. In February, city staff informed us of council's intention to implement a new model for funding community groups like Carbram starting in 2016, and that 2015 was to be a transition year with requests handled on a case-by-case basis. We're concerned for Carbram this year as our request for funding has not been approved, and instead council has initiated a new process that leaves the festival waiting until the end of May, or perhaps later, to reapply and only then know if we have the funding and support of city facilities and staff resources that we need to make the festival a success. With Carbram taking place in July, we need to have the city's commitment earlier in order to continue planning and to deliver the festival. We respectfully ask this council to reconsider the timing of its support to Carbram in this transition year and help us and our hundreds of volunteers make this year's multicultural festival a success. Our ask is not a lot. What we're suggesting is to eliminate the dedicated Brampton Transit shuttle and replace it with free rides on regular transit for passport holders. That would be a savings of approximately $25,000. Maintain rental rates at 2014 levels, which is a huge consideration as to whether pavilions will participate or not, and to continue to fund us at the level that you did last year. I'd like to thank you for your time and attention, and I would like to extend an invitation to every Bramptonian watching tonight to attend Carabram this year, which takes place on the weekend of July 10 to 12. We thank you for your support and look forward to your support for Carabram this year. Thank you.
Thank you. Scott Anderson. Mr. Anderson here? Welcome.
Thank you very much. Good evening, Madam Mayor, councillors. I'll keep mine short and sweet. I know we all don't want to be here as long as we need to be. There is a letter in your packages from our president, David Harmsworth. He sincerely apologizes for not being here himself today, but members of our band are currently rehearsing for a play to put on at the Rose Theatre. So we're currently working to help this community along and serve this community. We all understand that there's a need for a new program, and all we ask is that you consider the community groups when you're making your decisions. Keep us engaged in the conversations. And as a couple of other members have stated already, you need to continue to transitionally fund some of our groups. I think our biggest fear is that immediate cutoff of funds is going to severely jeopardize a lot of the community groups, and it would be terrible to see that happen. So thank you very much for the opportunity to speak, and have a great night.
Thank you. Marnie Richards. I know you're not Marnie Richards.
I'm not as good looking or as eloquent, but Marnie has asked if I speak on her behalf, if that is acceptable, Madam Mayor.
Rob Filkin, welcome.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. With the resolution that was passed by committee last Thursday, we are taking a step back in time, and we're not doing it in a DeLorean. Up to the year 2000, the City of Brampton did not fully fund the Arts Council. That year, the Arts Council's expenses exceeded its revenue by $26,000. In its budget presentation to Council in 2001, the Arts Council asked that the City fund its core operating expenses 100%, subject to an annual review by Council to approve its budget request. I can provide the clerk, if any members of Council wish, with a copy of that presentation that was made to Council in 2001. The then City Treasurer and City Manager supported that position, and Budget Committee approved it on April 4th, 2001, subsequently approved by Council. And Council additionally approved adding $26,000 to that budget request to wipe out the deficit. For the last 14 years, the Arts Council has received 100% of its core funding from the City of Brampton. Any additional funds that it receives through golf tournaments or through luncheons for the arts or any other means are made available to other arts groups in the city by way of grant. In recent years, Council has charged the Arts Council with also administering other grants that it has seen fit to provide, including the concert band, the Rose Orchestra, the Chinguacousy Swing Band, to name a few. The motion passed by committee last Thursday takes all that away, all the funding from the Arts Council. And that's fine. Council can do that. It has the authority to do that. But what it can't do legally is do that in a manner that is unreasonable, retroactive, and causes the Arts Council to suffer damages. Besides the concepts of openness and fairness and transparency that we hear often, there are legal obligations, there are legal doctrines called estoppel and detrimental reliance. The Arts Council has relied on Council's decisions for the last 14 years to fund it based on a resolution that was passed by this Council. And if this Council wants to take that away, it can, but it needs to do it in a way that's fair and reasonable and not retroactive, and make sure that the Arts Council doesn't suffer damages. I can assure you that if the Arts Council is brought into litigation over through any of its contracts or any of its employees, the city will be added to that litigation, and that is truly unfortunate. I'm asking that we avoid all that, and in your decision, if you do decide that the Arts Council should cease to exist, do it fairly, do it reasonably, and allow it to meet its legal obligations. You might think by what you're proposing that you're not taking away the funding, but you're only changing how it's done. What you are taking away is the certainty. You are going to put a fund together, some $700,000+, and I'm told there'll be 500+ applicants applying for those funds. So a group like the Arts Council cannot carry on without the certainty of its funding. We're going back to a time when our executive director spent 70% of her time writing grant proposals and organizing bingos. That's not a productive use of her time or talent. The council of the day in 2001 recognized the need for a vibrant arts community and the economic impact it has and the necessary role that the Arts Council has to play. The community group cannot operate in your new proposal, a community group such as the Arts Council. It can't hire employees, can't enter into contracts if it's not sure the funding's going to be there to honor those obligations going forward. The Arts Council cannot continue to exist under the proposal you are making. This is truly unfortunate. The relationship between the Arts Council and the City of Brampton has never been better. It has become a relationship and an environment of cooperation and working together for the benefit of the arts in Brampton. The City of Brampton staff, I'm told, are very close to bringing to council a new arts and culture master plan. And that will outline the role of the Arts Council with the City of Brampton and its relationship going forward. I urge you not to destroy what has taken decades to build, but if you must, please be fair and reasonable. Thank you.
Christopher Thompson, come down. You're the next speaker. Welcome.
Hello. Thank you, Madam Mayor and fellow councilors. My name is Christopher Thompson, and I am 25 years old and live in Ward 6. I have come today to speak as a youth that has been inspired to give back to my community due to the influence that Brampton Safe City has impacted my life as a teen and a young adult. As a young person, I was granted a summer position with Brampton Safe City, which I did for 3 consecutive summers. Throughout this time, I was able to witness firsthand the impact Brampton Safe City was able to have on the youth of Brampton. All throughout the summer, we would visit camps, schools, and interact and teach groups of children and teenagers relevant and interesting safety tips to help ensure they make better decisions in their daily lives. Not only was this method of teaching impactful to the youth that were hearing the message, but what made this more meaningful was that Brampton Safe City was empowering older youth such as myself to work and learn about safety and then go out and share it with our peers and others across Brampton, the City of Brampton. This is a valuable form of youth engagement because it takes place all across Brampton with partnering agencies, schools, and community groups, community centers and groups. The programming and tips are always evolving to stay relevant with new issues, and this method of youth dialogue ensures that the youth is engaging in conversation and that the understanding is and that the information is understood, and most importantly, working toward preventing a young person from making some bad choices or getting into accidents at their very young age. Brampton Safe City has a unique and needed grassroots structure which provides youth in Brampton with opportunity to get involved, learn life skills, and help youth achieve even their degrees, diplomas, and community service hours in a way that allows them to connect and learn about their city, grow much more and appreciate it. I was one of these students, and after going off to pursue higher education and full-time employment, I felt an immense desire to come back and give back to my community. Basically, a lot of this was due to Brampton Safe City, and there's a lot more youth, young and older, such as myself, that continually participate with Brampton Safe City, whether it's volunteers, summer jobs, placements, and we use these opportunities not only just to enter the community and dispel safety tips to others, but it's also for ourselves to grow, to be the citizens and professionals that you need us to be in the city, to recognize the importance. Myself, as part of the Brampton Safe City, we went all to different wards, schools, community centers, and I was able to have a better understanding of what goes on in the city, from the children to the youth to the adults, and none of that would have been possible without Brampton Safe City and the way that they connect and partner with so many different agencies so that they have access to children, youth, and even the families themselves, and deliver services and tips in the area of safety, which I think is important to everybody, in a way that individual personnel or other organizations might not be able to. They're able to do this at a grassroots level, bring people in, and through the neighborhood events, students such as myself, we go out, we learn first, we go out and we deliver this service to only help. So basically, what I'm asking is that the council, so I just ask that you and your council are fair to this organization and provide them with the necessary resources they need to see themselves through this transition and into the new framework you would like these community groups to go forward in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Doug Bryden. Mr. Bryden, welcome.
Madam Mayor and councillors, my name is Doug Bryden. I'm co-chair of the Citizens for a Better Brampton. Media reports over the last several months suggest the competitive dialogue process and its award of the City Hall expansion contract to Domino's left much to be desired. Details that are emerging are disturbing, indeed alarming, and cannot be helping the city's position in its defense of the Nzola lawsuit. A resolution of this case could very well happen this year. So our questions are, 1, should the matter go to trial, defense costs will increase significantly over and above the sunk costs to date. Has staff made adequate allowances for all legal and consultant fees and additional staff time costs should that occur? 2nd, should the city lose the case and any potential appeal, is the suit award entirely covered by insurance, with the exposure to the taxpayer limited to the deductible on the policy? Or did the city self-indemnify, which would expose the taxpayer to the entire suit award? And 3, if there is insurance, what is the deductible payable on the policy, and has staff included that amount as a precaution in the 2015 budget? Our concern is prudency. It may not happen this year, but it may. And if it does, it is significant. It will have a significant impact on the taxpayer in this city. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Janet Afferly. Welcome.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and councillors. I am asking Transit to review a $1 student fare for regional programs. My name is Janet Atherley. I live in wards 2 and 6 in Brampton. Brampton is a huge part of my identity, and I am passionate about education. I'm here today to speak to you about education. Students in Brampton attending regional programs want more affordable transit. I am asking that you consider $1 transit fee for all students in regional programs. This means regardless of their parents' income level. Transit is an essential right to students, just like water, doctors, and hospitals. I would like to see Brampton Transit funded by the city. Regional programs in Brampton for Brampton students. Public transit should be a right for students attending regional programs. at $3.75. Students can't afford that. There's no work out there for students. So we're asking that you please consider $1 transit for all students in Brampton attending regional programs. Students in regional programs want a fairer tax system, which would provide transit for $1. Let's work together so we can see students in Brampton succeed and leave them here so that they can work for us. When I was campaigning in Wards 2 and 6, I was running for school trustee. Again, I'm passionate about education. Every door, every third or fourth door that I would knock on, most parents would say, transit. Transit is expensive. My kids can't afford $3.75. They keep losing those Presto cards. Then I have to pay another $6 for a new Presto card and another $2 for a sleeve. That adds up to $1,000 a year. I'll give you another example. A child attending the truck and coach program. What a wonderful program. The provincial government invested $2 million into that program. We can't get a child from Wards 2 and 6 to Bramley Secondary School. It would take that child 1 hour in travel time, 3 buses. That 14-year-old child can't even get a job because he's only 14 years old. So here we are. We're asking for $1 transit, more affordable for students to attend regional programs. I'm sure you would agree education is very important. Without education, none of you would be sitting here today. Regional programs are great for education. If I cannot put a regional program, or you cannot put a regional program in every school in Brampton, then give them the busing. What's the deal? It's only $1 if we come to that conclusion. Changes to transit for regional programs are needed for our children's future and for everybody, so we can all live happily together. Transit is going to be my main objective, my main focus. I'm going to try to convince you over the next few years that transit is very important to our students. It's only $1. If Transit could please review the $1 student fare for regional programs, that would really help. Again, thank you for your leadership, everyone here. I'd like to give you an example of my beautiful daughter, Sarah Atherley. She attends a regional program. I have spent so much money into getting her to and from school. Sarah, please come forward.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and Councillors. My name is Sarah Atherley, and I'd like to share with you I attend a regional program, and I have friends who have to wake up an hour and 30 minutes every morning to come to school by taking the public transit. I have spoken to these individuals on many different occasions, and it appears to me that their thrive to do well in these classes are more than you would expect. For them to take that hour and 30-minute bus ride really proves, in their marks especially, that they want to be there more than any other student does. They, from the results of their test, beat out scores from people who just show up every day who get busing from the school. To me, I think that it's amazing their dedication and persistence to be able to wake up every morning just because they love what they do. They realize that they will make the sacrifices to wake up every morning quite early just to be there. And not only that, they will stay after school and get the extra help when needed. Their dedication is one that should be taken note upon. I believe that if you're very passionate about something, you will do whatever you can. And this $1 for transit would definitely help out so many people that I know, and also students who are going into grade 9s, 10s, etc. I think that this could be the determining factor to students who take the extra step in their educational leap. And actually, I think that this would be an amazing opportunity for future generations so that they don't feel like they're restricted from joining these things. They should feel like everybody has a fair chance to be there. So that's my say on it, and thank you very much for your time.
Thank you both. Thank you very much. Your
I
5
just
minutes
wanted-
is up.
Oh, okay.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Is there anybody else who'd like to come down and make a deputation before we do our budget? Come on down. And if you could just state your name for the public meeting record.
Yes. My name is Rose O'Reilly, and I'm a resident of Brampton. And this is a last-minute presentation, but I've been sitting here, and I can't sit still. I have to say something. I would like to follow up on Peter Bailey's delegation presentation on the ethnic-based media. And I'm sitting here listening to many groups asking for money. groups, and it's a tough year, and it's sad to hear so many people being turned down, and I'm sure it's very difficult, Madam Mayor and councillors, by the way, hello, for you to do this. But I'm puzzled by why the city is going to spend $682,000 on an ethnic-based media when, and I know you said that 50% of our population is not just English speakers, and I acknowledge that, and I think it's great that we try to engage people, and who wouldn't want to do that? That only would make our city better. However, when people were asked by foreign media what is important to you, only 8% of people said that ethnic media is important to them. So out of 50% of the community that lives here, it was done by each ward. So it was definitely done. It wasn't just done for English speakers. It was for all speakers, and only 8% want this. And I also want to say that just because you translate things into 10 plus French, and then obviously English, 10 additional language, I don't know if there's any evidence-based measurement to demonstrate that that will actually increase engagement in Brampton. Yes, you can put it in another language, but there's a lot more to engaging citizens than paperwork. And most people who come to Canada and who become Canadian citizens, not most, all, if they become a Canadian citizen, they must speak English or French. That's a requirement. For people who are not citizens or who choose not to, but they're still residents of the city, from my understanding, we've had other, we're already leaders in this area. So what we're doing is we want to be the best at it, which is great. But to me, maybe that's a future dream for our city. But right now, it seems to me that we're bringing up the taxes by 6%. We also have other issues that we've heard tonight. And I just have to say that I think it's a very premature idea. I don't think we're ready for it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening. My name is Barbara Ann Smith, and I'm a resident of Ward 3. I am a mother, a taxpayer, and an actively engaged member of my neighborhood and my larger community. I am privileged to serve the communities of Ardglen and Orenda as the Community Development Facilitator at the Journey Neighborhood Center in Ardglen. I'm speaking in any and all of those capacities tonight to implore you to please reconsider your decision and your strategy regarding the community grants. I'm not a professional community development specialist. I am a mom who, motivated by my rage at the senseless murder of a boy in his home, in my neighborhood, 300 meters from where I live with my 5-year-old son, chose to become engaged in the activities of my church in my neighborhood. I have very deep personal convictions for what I do, and they are born out of my faith and out of my civic obligation to contribute to the betterment of my neighborhood. I could not do what I do without Brampton Safe City and the amazingly brilliant, talented, professional, gifted people who work there. I had no background in what I was doing other than my own rage and my life as the daughter of a community activist. These organizations, Brampton Safe City, Carabram, the Brampton Arts Council, they are the underpinnings of our civil society. And if you take them away, we are left without the resources and the partnerships and the leadership and the education by which to engage our citizens to do what is right in their neighborhoods, which only relieves a burden for you. Because when we have engaged citizenry, when we have passionate individuals who walk their streets in their neighborhoods, engage their neighbors and friends, that only makes Brampton a better place to be. So I urge you, purely as a mom and as a taxpayer, I want you to spend my money on these programs. I am flabbergasted by some of the presentations here tonight about, I understand the the need to be, multilingual and servicing all of our residents and all of that. But from what I see on the ground, I see a lot of multicultural media and outlets already. If most of the population is saying that's not a priority to them, but that they're worried about safety on their streets, I tell you, I live in a 40-kilometer zone on Cornwall Road where nobody drives that speed limit. I worry for my son. I've had to buy my own orange cone to put out on my front yard so that when he plays out there, the drivers on my street are given a visible reminder to slow down so that the children in my neighborhood aren't killed by their stupid traffic decisions. I've been a school bus driver. I've been a transit operator. I walk my neighborhood every day. That is the priority, and Brampton Safe City is meeting a need that the police used to meet, that the fire department used to meet, but they don't have the budgets or the manpower any longer either. We need those agencies. We need that expertise. We need that citizen engagement. I could stand here for hours and regale you with phenomenal stories of the transformation that I've seen in my neighborhood since I became involved in the outreach and the Journey Neighborhood Center since it opened in November of 2013. But I'll leave you with this. Today, I spent the morning with the family of Nicholas Gabriel, who lost his life in the Ardglen fire last June the 8th. We had 50 people who came to his birthday party because today he would have been 11. We went to the cemetery and we released balloons together and we comforted his family, and that would not have happened 2 years ago without Brampton Safe City. So please, I know that you're parents and that you're civil servants and that you have a passion. I know Jeff Bowman quite well. He has volunteered for us. I know that you are parents and citizens who also share a passion for your community. So I simply want to urge you again to please reconsider what looks to be a really disastrous decision and keep these agencies and these community groups alive, because it only makes us better and your lives easier in the long run. Thank you for listening.
Welcome, Mr. Zappa.
She's a hard act to follow. Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of council. I want to say a few words about citizen engagement and how your budget may impact that. But first, I want to ask everybody who came tonight in support of the community groups. Would everybody who came tonight in support of the community groups please stand up? Okay, Madam Mayor, members of council, please take a look at these people. They come from every walk of life, every corner of Brampton. They represent every age. And they came here tonight to give you a powerful message. It's a positive message. They're here to serve you. They're here for you. And you can multiply this number by 10,000 and you won't even begin to understand how many people in this community are committed to making the quality of life better. Imagine if you had to pay all of those staff. These people are giving their hearts, their souls, their work, their talents to make Brampton a better place. And they want to continue that. They want you to understand that. They're asking for only 3 things for everything they do. Number 1, they want your respect. Number 2, they want a little money to help cover those costs you've heard about and debated the last little while. And number 3, they want your leadership out there in the neighborhoods, in the schools, on our streets, to work with them. This is your army. This is your team. I just want to say, please, please do not lose them. This is Brampton's true resource. I've traveled the world working with the World Health Organization, and when I'm out there, communities say to me, the hardest thing they have is to get people working together, communities, groups, and people. And here in Brampton, we are incredibly blessed with caring people, caring organizations who are already set up, who are already doing tremendous work. Please, please, keep them going. Thank you.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, councillors, staff, and members of the public.
I wasn't going to speak tonight.
Can you just
But-
say, we know who you are, but could you state
Oh.
your name for the record, please?
I know you all know me. George Startup.
Thank you.
Yeah, concerned citizen.
Welcome.
I know I read it in the paper, and it didn't hit me until I saw the early part of the presentation tonight, where there was a mention of a 2% tax levy. Now, in a previous budget meeting, we had a 2% tax levy imposed upon us. It was announced by the previous financial chief, Mo Lewis, who in his statement said that those who benefit should pay. Those who benefit should pay. And that tax levy was for the Peel Memorial Facility. I don't call it a hospital. It's not a hospital. Tonight, there's a mention of another tax levy. Who pays for that? Where's that money coming from? It's coming from the property taxpayers. It'll be on my property tax bill. It will not be on the 30,000 odd basement apartment dwellers tax bill. And that's the property taxpayers of Brampton who's paying the revenue. It's our money that goes into the revenue that you guys use. Now you're talking about another tax levy. Please consider. Infrastructure. The basement apartment dwellers use infrastructure. They use the roads, the bridges, the hospital, the healthcare facility. We don't need any more tax levies. There's other ways to pay for infrastructure. And I can think of many of them. But will you talk to me about it? Anyway, please consider imposing another 2% tax levy on the property taxpayers of Brampton. And on the other matter about grants, please consider the grants that we're going to give out this year. It's the taxpayers who pay for these grants, and we want to see benefits for them. Thank you.
Thank you.
John Buck, member of Citizens for a Better Brampton. I just wanted a couple clarifications on the initial presentation. On page 8 at the top, I noticed there's 0 for the school board's portion of the overall tax increase. I'm curious as to whether that meant the school board had a 0 tax increase this year, or if it wasn't known yet, and which would mean that once it is known that the overall tax increase would be higher than indicated on the page 8 of the handout.
Mr. Honeyborn, do you want to respond?
Madam Mayor, there is no increase for the school boards for this year.
On page 1, the key decisions. The bottom 2 decisions seem to be contradictory, if I understand another report. They're recommending permanent revoking of the 1/3 tax-free status, and I congratulate the councillors on joining the rest of citizens of Canada and paying 100% of their income taxes on it. But one of the reports I saw indicated that there was going to be a substantial increase in the councillors' salaries to, in effect, keep their after-tax income at the same amount. Yet the final thing says that there's a recommendation that council and staff have salary freezes. There seems to be a contradiction there. And if I understand the previous report properly, that the councillors are going to get a substantial increase in gross pay in order to keep their net pay the same as before they eliminated the 1/3 tax-free status. And so my question is are they getting an increase in order to keep their net pay the same?
So I don't know if we're going to get into the question and answer right now. This is just your
Okay,
chance
no
to ask a
problem.
question.
I have one more comment on grants.
Yep.
There are different ways to get things done. I refer back to the cleanup after the ice storm a year ago in January. I was involved with a bunch of volunteers in cleaning up the St. Mary's Church lot after the ice storm. In 4 Saturday mornings, we had it cleaned up, and it was quite a large property, and it was at zero cost. On the last Saturday we were working, we finally heard some cleanup crews over at Gage Park. So it took over a month to get things going at Gage Park, and I imagine it would be at substantial cost. My point being that people shouldn't stand around waiting for taxpayers' money, that they should do stuff for themselves. There is something to be said for volunteerism, for having bake sales, etc., and because the grants ultimately come out of the property taxes of hardworking people. Thank you.
Thank you. Come on up.
Good evening. My name is Matt Yeroshenko. It's Yeroschenko. Coincidentally, I was going to speak to one of the same topics as the gentleman behind me, but I think rather than asking questions, I'll just present some statistics and opportunities. So in terms of council taking away their 1/3 tax break to bring everybody to the same tax rate, but increasing salary to make up for the difference, we're looking at right around $392,000 total that we are going to be taking out of the taxpayer money to pay you guys so that you have the same net income at the end of the year, which seems a little bit outrageous to me, especially when we consider that the original purpose for the 1/3 tax break was to make up for expenses that councillors once had before there were expense accounts. And so again, we have a room filled with people all begging for money so that we can maintain our community programs, yet we're taking just shy of $400,000 out of the coffer. Alternatively, I would like to suggest, before I get to that actually, if we include the extra about $52,000 that regional councillors and you, Madam Mayor, are given for being a part of the regional council, that once again elevates the regional councillor and mayor's salaries to the highest in Canada, if I'm not mistaken, and I may be. And that was a little bit of a source of controversy for us in the previous council. So I just think that may be something to consider. Beyond that, an alternative to handling the situation would be to take us back to the reason we originally had the 1/3 tax break, which would be to cover our expenses as councillors. And if we were to do that, then we could get rid of our expense accounts, which, as again we learned in the last iteration of council, seems to be a source of abuse for at least some people sitting in my midst. So if we were to, rather than get rid of the tax break, get rid of our expense accounts, that would leave that money that we really need, these people really need, for our city programs, and we would not have any real conflicts like I see right now. So just for the sake of conversation, we could have almost $400,000 extra in our coffers at the end of the year and take away those dangerous, dangerous expense accounts. So I would like to leave that up in the air. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Does anybody else want to make a public delegation? Going once, going twice. Okay, thank you everybody for coming forward. We appreciate your advice and your input and your comments. And I have a motion by Councillor Moore, seconded by Councillor Paleshi, that the presentation of Peter Honeyborn, Executive Director, Treasurer, Finance, Corporate Services to the Special Council meeting be received. All those in favor? All those opposed? That's carried. And I have another motion moved by Councillor Bowman, second by Councillor Willens, that the following delegations to the Special Council meeting be received, and that's 15 individuals who came forward this evening. All those in favor? All those opposed? That's carried. So, member of council, the 2015 budget is before us. Do members have any specific questions for staff about the budget, or do they wish to speak to the budget? Councillor Moore.
Well, thank you, Madam Mayor. This is probably a good time to bring forward the resolution in the page 31 of 33, I think it is. Sorry. Page 13 of 23 to 15 of 23, which was the resolution that we passed last Thursday night with regard to the community grant making. I do have an amended motion or an addendum to the motion. We've had an opportunity as members of council to have a lot of conversation between last Thursday and now, even though there was a 4-day weekend in the middle of it. And to borrow Mr. Filkin's words, in the interest of being fair and reasonable, I've got a motion. I think the clerk may be prepared to put it, I think it was emailed to him, if he could put it on the screen. I will read it, which I believe is going to address, at least in part, some of the concerns that were raised here tonight. This council, I think I speak for all when I say we understand fully and completely the contributions that volunteers make and that organizations in our city make. What we're trying to do is make a process available to more groups to make a difference, to meet criteria that will help to strengthen their neighborhood, their community, their scope of influence. So I'll read it. I know it's there, but for the matter of the public record, whereas the City of Brampton 2015 budget process has been delayed to provide for a comprehensive public engagement process, and whereas Council's consideration of funding requests from external groups has subsequently been delayed, creating a level of financial uncertainty for these groups, and whereas staff recommendations for criteria to evaluate budget submissions, as outlined in the recommendation from last Thursday from external groups, will not be before Council for a decision for several more weeks, be it therefore resolved that Council approve the following in advance of Council's full consideration of the external funding requests, and that the Treasurer be authorized to, number 1, provide the Brampton candidates with a grant of $36,000 being the full amount of their 2015 funding request, and number 2, to provide the Brampton Excelsiors with a 2015 grant of $30,000, which is in line with their previous year's requests, and to provide the Brampton Arts Council with a grant of 50% of their base 2014 community grant amount, and the payment to the Brampton Arts Council be adjusted by the amount of outstanding invoices due to the city. And number 4, to provide the Brampton Safe City Association with a grant of 50% of their 2014 community grant amount, and that the payment to Brampton Safe City be adjusted by the amount of outstanding invoices due to the city. And therefore be it resolved that grant payment to Carabram be deferred, and that Carabram report back to a future meeting of City Council on the results of the review of their delivery model and explore efficiencies with Councillor Miles and Paleshi. Therefore be it resolved that this resolution is adopted to facilitate a transition from the 2015 community grant process to a new 2016 community grant process, and further, that if this resolution is inconsistent or in conflict with previous council's resolutions and past practices regarding the funding of groups affected by this resolution shall prevail over such previous resolutions and past practices. I guess you can figure out that legal got their hands on this. Therefore, be it resolved, further resolved, that time-sensitive requests from other community organizations during the period between April 8th, 2015 and Council approval of 2015 interim grant-making program be addressed on a case-by-case basis requiring Council approval. I think it's important to members of Council that I've had a chance to talk to, and we did work with legal and our finance department and the chief operating offices, or the chief operating officer, to make sure that we were in fact fair and reasonable. I did have a chance to speak with Marnie yesterday, and I did have a meeting with Larry Zacher. I will, though, however, ask that Peter Honeyborn, the treasurer, there is a reference in here to outstanding invoices, and I think it's important that members of council understand what that means, because we do have a relationship with these two groups whereby we pay expenses. So if you could cover that piece of the resolution, Mr. Honeyborn.
Thank you. Madam Mayor, are you able to put the invoices that are referred to in the resolution relate to services that we provide to three community groups, being the Brampton Downtown Development Corporation, the Brampton Arts Council, and the Brampton Safe City Association. And the primary service that we provide is a payroll service, not unlike a private payroll service, but we provide it to these groups at no cost. We pay their staff, and then we invoice those groups for the amounts that we paid on a monthly basis. The amounts referred to in the resolution for the Brampton Safe City Association is $130,196 that they owe the city in respect of unpaid invoices. And for the Brampton Arts Council, and it shows on the screen there are two unpaid invoices amounting to $35,919. These amounts would be deducted from the amounts that the resolution, if passed, would require that these amounts be deducted from the payments that we would make to those organizations.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councilor Sparvier, is it on this issue or is it something else? Okay. Any other speakers on this particular issue? Councilor Palacio.
You're going for something else?
Yeah. Councilor Palacio.
Thank you. Can I just get refer to Brampton Safe City on the can you put that back up so that they can see that, or do they have a copy? Come on forward. Come on forward. Come forward, please, Larry.
We're not.
Am I not allowed to ask the delegation?
The delegations have made their presentation. This is a matter of you clarifying with staff about the numbers, but not to have additional delegations. We've had the opportunity.
We have this.
Unless council wants to go through this again with all of the delegations.
No, we're only referring to two of the organizations that I'm sure this is the first time that they might be seeing this.
Is it the will of council that we open it up to the delegations again? All those in favor?
If it's only a question of clarification.
That's all it is. It's a question of clarification, both for.
So is there a willingness to do that? All of those in favor? Okay. Mr. Zacher, come on up.
Thank you, Larry. And just to ask for November and December here, are these? Well, I'll ask you. You just briefly looked at it. Are all these correct? On your
Yes,
part?
those invoices have been sent to us. We've prepared the checks, but we held them because going into the start of 2015, we had no notice or no understanding. We do have documents in place that the city previously, and as a standard course of action, were authorizing release of 50% of the previous year's funding by January 15th.
Mm-hmm.
That didn't happen this year, so we've been holding those because virtually it would have emptied our bank account, and we are prepared to release those at any time. The funds are in the bank, and the only reason we held them was because we would not have been in a position to pay our rent going forward or anything.
You'd have to shut the doors down. Shut the doors.
Yeah. So we never had no intention to pay them. It's there. We just wanted to see what the outcome of this situation, and given that the money didn't flow that we thought was going to flow from council or from the city on January 15th, we were in a tight spot.
Okay, thank you. And then I guess the same question for the Arts Council.
Yes.
Yes, through you, Madam Mayor. We have just received the invoice for February. We have not received the March one yet, but the numbers look good.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other speakers on this issue? So we have the motion before us. I presume we can vote on it at this point, Mr. Clerk, okay? All those in favor of the motion? All those opposed? That's carried. Okay, Councillor Spovieri.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Do we need to get permission from council if we wanted to ask a question of the delegations?
I think so. I think that was just on that particular issue, but yeah.
Because I thought that we were going to hold our questions of the delegations till everyone spoke, so that would leave it open for us.
I guess you have 15 delegations. Are you planning to invite all of them?
No, no, just what I'm really passionate about.
Well, there's a few issues you're passionate about, so your
Yeah.
council members may not support you. So I guess it depends. You're going to have to present it to council.
Yeah, I have a question to ask Mr. Bryden. He came down to present on made a presentation. I'd like to ask a question of him.
So is council, are you agreement of that, of him asking a question? Okay, come on down.
Thank you, Mr. Bryden, for presenting to us tonight. I have just a quick question for you. I was going through some of the documents that it's been provided to us, and I saw your name. You were one of the 3 proponents that attended a public meeting or a city organized meeting when this whole project and the Southwest project was initiated. I saw your name there. You were one of 3.
Councillor Spovieri, can I just interrupt? How does this relate to the budget?
Well, I want to just get a clarification of his concern, and then because
If you can relate it to the budget, then you can keep going.
Well,
But if you
Mr.
can't-
Bryden has indicated that there should be some money in the budget in case. Are we making provisions in our budget for this lawsuit in case the city loses it? And I think that's a good question. And because I don't know if we have an answer for it, but I'm trying to get an answer for Mr. Bryden, whether there is, whether we have reserves in place, whether there is money set aside, or whether we're making any provisions, or whether we are just assuming that everything's going to go our way and there's going to be no impact to the taxpayer. You know, like, my understanding is the only sure thing in life is death and taxes, as we all know. So I think that Mr. Bryden asked a very legitimate question, and I believe that there should be some kind of a response. And if staff does not have a response,
So I think that's a question to staff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So I'm not sure who wants to respond to this, legal or the treasurer.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I'm not quite sure what the question was.
I think the question is, are there finances set aside for the provision of the lawsuit? I think is a short version of the question.
Madam Mayor, the city has, at any given time, a number of different lawsuits that they're named in, and what we do, and this is confirmed with our auditors, KPMG, is we place a note in our financial statements called a contingent liability note, and that note speaks to those potential litigations and the probabilities, and at that point in time, it's mentioned. So there's no specific provision for anything until we have a fairly good idea of the outcome.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Spovieri. I think you have the answer. You can.
There's no money. There's no money in the budget in case there's no provisions. So I get that.
Thank you.
No, but I do have other comments.
Other question?
No, not Mr. Bryden, no.
Is it related to the budget?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Bryden.
First, I want to address the one issue about the request for transit, for $1 transit for students. I believe we, and staff may recall, we had a presentation from our transit department that if we were to provide a service to the students, I believe it was in the order of $6 or $7 million. I believe it would cost the city. Was that right? Around there?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor, I'm going to ask Sue Connor, Executive Director of Transit, to come down. There was 2 parts to that report back to council. It showed the impact on the fare and the operating budget, but it also showed the capital requirements that would be associated with that. So I'll just ask Sue to respond to your specific question.
Yeah, certainly. I think the public needs to know what the impact would be and whether you did calculate a $1 fee, what it would translate. I know that the delegation asked for only for students that have regional programs, but I think we have to treat all students equally if we're ever going to think about a program. All the students across the city that do use the transit to get to school, I think they should all be treated equally. I don't believe we should be looking at any particular groups to benefit. Yeah.
Through you, Madam Mayor, the estimation for the operating cost was just around the $7 million mark. But we also looked at a capital funding issue with capacity and having to buy more buses to carry students. And just one comment from the delegation, they mentioned the cash fare amount. I just want to remind council that students that use Presto pay an e-purse amount of $2.50.
Okay, so through the chair, so we have roughly about $7 million worth of student fares at the present time in the city?
Through Madam Mayor, no, that's our estimation if we were to open up student fares, reduce them drastically, that we looked at how far distance to schools, and we made an estimation how many additional students we'd probably carry if we had free service.
Oh, so what you're predicting is that, through the chair, that if we opened this up and provided this service, that many students who now walk to school would hop on the bus for $1 and get, rather than walk, they use the bus.
Through Madam Mayor, we were looking at free service, but we were looking at being conservative and how far students have to travel to school, that reasonably, if you have to walk a couple kilometers, if the transit service was free, you were probably going to jump on a bus.
And that would cost us $7 million?
That was our estimation, and as I said, we looked at pretty conservative numbers when we did our review.
And that's because, through the chair, we would have to purchase new buses and hire more operators?
That was, the operating cost impact was, yes, carrying more students, but based on having to carry those extra students as well, we looked at capital costs that we would need extra buses because the students do travel in our peak periods, so we would have the capacity to carry them on our current fleet. We would have to add additional trips. Otherwise, we were at risk of carrying students for free and leaving fare-paying passengers behind because of crowded buses.
Okay, I see the rationale. It's not that the students would use the transit off-peak, which would be great if they did. So they use it at the same time as the rest of the rest of the population. So that explains, and Madam Mayor, and I think that I hope the delegation understands the constraints that we have on this issue. That if we were to consider this, it would have to be provided to all the students and not just to some students. So from that perspective, I don't believe it's a smart thing to do for us to consider that. So thank you very much for that. But I do have one more issue I want to just resurrect. As you may recall, I expressed some concern about some of this costs for this media translation service, and I was questioning whether it's really a necessary expenditure at this time when we went through the budget process, and I felt that given the amount of tax increases that we're passing on to the population, I didn't think that was really such a high critical issue that we should be adding an additional burden on the taxpayer to provide this service. I think that what we're doing is quite heavy as it is, and I didn't really believe that this is really a crucial service that we should be providing at this time. This is a nice gesture, as I said before. It's something that if the city was had a in a very healthy state of financial affairs. I could see us going that direction to provide the service to the residents that may require it. But as we know, we're not in a very good financial situation. We're struggling. We're trying to build up our reserves, and to me, only serving the 10 languages out of the 89 languages, I didn't believe it made sense. If all the languages were being provided the service, then I could understand, just like with the transit issue. If we could provide it to all the students, that would be great, but we can't because of the cost. And I think that this is the same situation. If we were able to provide the service to all the residents of Brampton, all the 89 languages, for this amount, I would say I could support it. But only providing the service to 10 languages and leaving the other 79 out, I don't think it's fair. I don't think it's equitable, and I don't think it's really necessary. And I'm going to ask that we re-vote on this portion. Now, I could live with approving the budget, referring this to staff for a very detailed report to really justify this, and if there's a good justification, and we can perhaps even have a public meeting to see whether and ask the residents to see whether this is something that they really want, and then we can move forward with this program. But otherwise, I can't not support it the way it's going, the way it is. I think we have to make some kind of provisions to make sure that it's money well spent, and that actually that the population, the residents, actually want us to spend it that way. And I think we should have a public meeting to that effect, to ask the residents, do you want us to spend this almost $700,000 in this manner? But as we heard, there's other groups here that were tighten the strings on them, and I'm sure that at least they don't feel that's fair that we're cutting some old services to provide some new services. So, Madam Mayor, in good conscience, I think that if we want to move this item forward, we need to really look at it in fine detail, and really build a business plan, and also ask the public whether they really want this service or not.
So, Mr. Pelosi, So Councillor Sprovieri, you've actually given two recommendations. One is you won't support it, and then you said second. So let me just finish. I'm just trying to clarify.
All right.
Then you said you'd approve the budget subject to a detailed report and a discussion paper being brought forward to corporate service. So is that your recommendation?
I would support that, Madam Mayor.
So would I. I think that's a fair response. Does anybody else want to speak on this particular item?
Yes.
Okay. Councillor Pelosi.
Thank you. I guess unfortunately, Councillor Sprovier took a lot of his word, or my words, out of my mouth. But I agree to that. I think that we've going through this whole budget process. We've asked for feedback, and we've almost begged for feedback, and spent a fair bit of money trying to get that feedback. Today, we hear from a lot of the residents, and now it's time to act on that feedback. You hear what they want. They're here telling you. We've heard it from their mouths tonight, and I think it's time to, as this council, I think we need to act. So I do have an amendment to the ethnic portion of the budget, and I'm willing to put that forward.
Is it the same wording as what Councillor Sprovieri spoke about?
No.
Subject to a detailed report?
So the way I read the motion that has been brought to council is that we're going to put this set number of funds aside for this ethnic media, and then in the meantime, we're also going to have staff review and set kind of a game plan, strategy to going forward. And I kind of find like that's putting the cart before the horse. We heard today during council that council made a bad decision with the Rust-I report, saying that we didn't set the record straight in what we wanted and when we wanted it and how much we were going to pay. So now we're left holding a bag of money that we're continuing to hand over to say, okay, is this enough money? Can we have it now? We continue to pay, and yet we have not received the report. So what I'm asking council to do today is direct staff to go out and put a strategic plan together for this portion of the budget, to report back to council in June, and as council, we will determine how much to go forward. But today, I'm asking to cut the $410,000 for this portion and only provide $205,000 on council's approval once staff comes back with a plan and a strategy to move forward. So that's the gist of my...
We have two conflicting motions here. Mr. Clerk, could you write up Councillor Spovieri's? And then I'll go through my list. Councillor Bowman, you wanted to speak on this issue?
Yes. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I believe a lot of what I wanted to say has been brought up already by the other two councillors. If we're going to be putting an expenditure out of this magnitude and asking taxpayers to pay for it, I'm a firm believer we've got to test and measure everything. We just can't jump in and say we're going to spend $600,000. We need to put it out somewhere. We need to test it. We need to measure how many people are actually using it. We need to measure what is going on in the community and if this is really warranted or not. I think what everybody wants here is value for every tax dollar they've got, and I think by putting testing and measurement criteria in, that's the only way to ensure we are getting value from it. Thanks.
Okay. Councillor Gibson, is it on this issue? Councillor Gibson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I'm going to agree with Councillor Paleski. I think there's certain things in this, if you look, that we want to do, and I think the public want us to do, and that's the community engagement tools that are in there. We just went through a whole process, a very extensive process in the last few months that I think we need to evaluate to see what worked and what didn't work. And I think what Councillor Paleski is saying, please correct me if I'm wrong, is that we would keep that portion of it in the budget, but cut out the ethnic media portion in the budget. So Councillor Spovieri's motion, I think, would keep the whole thing in there and we review it. I don't think that accomplishes anything because it still is part of the over 6% increase in the taxes. So I would prefer to take that ethnic media portion out of it and review and have some more details on it for next year's budget, but keep in the portion for engagement with the public and review what we've done in the last few months, because I think we need to do that before we determine what next year is going to look like.
You know what, I'm going to go to my next speaker first, and then I'll come back to you, just in case it's something else you can clarify. Councillor Miles. Is it on this issue?
Oh, Mr. Dillon?
No, he's on something else.
I'm on something else.
Okay. Councillor Paleski, if you want to respond.
Yes, thank you. Yes, like you said, I'm only pulling out I and asking that to be pulled out of the motion and vote on that separately. And I'm asking for an amendment to the motion on I, Corporate Ethnic Media Program.
You want to speak on it? Okay. Councillor Dillon, you want to speak on this issue now?
Yeah, I do want to speak on it. Just, I'm going to get to that. Just got a couple of other comments first, if that's okay. I just want to thank everybody for coming today. I think you guys showed great initiative, and you guys showed great care for your community to come out and really voice what you feel strongly about. So I commend all of you for coming. Thanks so much. I just want to make a couple comments, and I'm going to get into what I have to say about the ethnic media portion. I think I just want to give you a quick, comment on my first experience here. I heard a couple of different things today, politics or, we're trying to buy Louis Vuitton bags. I think everybody here, from what I've seen is my experience, my first time on council, that everybody's, put their best and honest effort in trying to respect the taxpayers' money. So I want to thank everybody here for giving their full and honest effort for councilors. Speaking for two councilors, just a young man up there, I just want to correct one thing as well. I think the one-third tax portion was referring to, we got I think the government allowed one-third tax off, so you can have that for your driving allowance, because there's quite a bit of driving. So there's a discretionary fund that we get. I think it's about $45,000 for 4 years. I think that's something separate, though. Pardon me?
No, please don't have a debate
Yeah, no,
with me. Just
no worries.
say your piece.
There's a separate card. So I just wanted to clear. We can talk about that after, though. But just in terms of what we were speaking about now, I think one of the realities is that we do have a very large ethnic population here, and we do have to engage them. My own experience in Ward 9 and 10 was that they weren't as engaged as I would have liked them to be. They do read some of the ethnic newspapers, and what we kind of wanted to do was have some of our media releases relayed to them, convey our message to them, because sometimes some of the papers that I was reading, the information was incorrect. So we want to make sure everybody's as educated and as engaged as possible. So I think we've had a healthy discussion today, and I think we can, for the most part from what I'm hearing, is that we want to include it, but we might want to rethink our strategies. So that's something I'll support, but I do think we need to engage everybody. Everybody doesn't read just the Brampton Guardian. I think we got to evolve as well and realize our population might be changing, the demographic might be changing as well. The point we want to do is educate everybody and make sure that everybody has the right information. So again, I do think we need the ethnic media portion, but I think we might want to rethink of how we do it. So I think having a discussion with the residents is something that I'm open to. Thank you.
Councillor Miles, do you want to speak on this issue at all? Okay. Councillor Elaine Moore.
Well, thank you. If I understand Councillor Sprovieri's, he's suggesting that we approve the budget, but that we have staff prepare a discussion paper so that we all better understand where these initiatives are going to take us. If that's the case, I think that's the direction that we need to go. I think all of us need to understand, what are we doing today? How effective is it? Where do we want to go? Where should we be going? And how do we get there? And we need some money to do that. I don't know that we know exactly how much money we need to do that, but I do think we need money in the budget to evaluate whether we're sort of above or below the line in terms of services that we are providing for a very culturally diverse community. But part of the problem is that we haven't had a chance to discuss this initiative prior to budget. The budget item was in here. Usually in most of the other items that are in the budget, we've had reports over the past year, we've had discussions, we've had conversations. On this, we haven't had a chance to, so there's a real lack of understanding and ownership on the part of members of council of what this investment is going to provide for us and provide for the community at the end. So I think we need to have a more fulsome conversation about it. I think we all benefit from that. If there's a community engagement opportunity through that exercise, I think that the community will benefit from that as well, and will benefit from their input. So I'm prepared to support approving this on the understanding or subject to staff bringing forward a discussion paper so we can make an informed decision of the kinds of things that we should be doing with this investment in the community. If I can, we did the telephone town halls this year. First time ever. I think we engaged something like 20 or 23,000 people through the telephone town halls. If that's part of this budget, then we need to make sure we continue doing that. We heard loud and clear through that process that people thought that was a great way. They could stay at home. They didn't have to find a babysitter or come out and sit in these uncomfortable seats in the council chambers in order to offer their opinions and provide some input. And if that's part of this budget, then we need to make sure that it's in here, but we need to understand what we're getting for it. So, thank you.
Through you, Madam Mayor, thank you very much. Just my comment would be from my experience. One of the things that, when we talk about transparency, I am pleased to see that there is discussion regarding the merits, regardless if you're in favor or against it. I have extensive experience in different levels of government, and I can tell you that a lot of times, be it the federal government, provincial government, when you talk about media translations, and you can go to every ministry and they do language translations, they do ethnic media outlets, but it doesn't become a separate budget item. What it is, it's really buried in a budget for communications. Federal government, provincial government, international organizations. So one of the things that's interesting about this is that there's a lot of attention and focus on that because there is that level of transparency for us to discuss it, regarding the merits of it. But, if you look at the different levels of government, and I would ask you, and if you have the opportunity to speak with your representatives, each ministry in each level of government has money associated with communicating with ethnic communities. So that's the only comment I'd like to make just regarding the transparency. And it just speaks to, I think, our efforts to really be transparent as a council.
Just for clarity, so we have two motions on the floor. Councillor Sproviaries would put $409,000 into the budget, and okay, well, I just want Councillor Paleshi's is $409,000 and Councillor Paleshi's is $205,000 because it's half the year's almost gone anyway. Okay, thank you.
I kind of, what I'm asking for though, and I just want to make it clear, is that I'm removing out of 8A, line number I. I'm removing it from the budget, and I'm only speaking on that item. Okay. Okay.
The first one is Councillor Sproviaries. It's an approval of the existing budget subject to a detailed report and a discussion paper that would return to corporate services with an ethnic media program. So that's the first motion. And the second one is Councillor Paleshi's, which removes the corporate ethnic media program, and the staff will be reporting back in June to the same committee on a strategic plan. Okay, so I will start with the first motion and vote on that. Sorry, Councillor Gibson?
The first motion passes.
The second motion would be redundant.
It would be redundant.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
Thank you.
I just thought I'd tell you how it's going to work. So the first motion we can take. Mr. Clerk, I'd like a recorded vote on the first motion.
Through you, Mayor Jeffrey, a recorded vote's been requested on the motion moved by Councillor Sprovieri. All in favor, please stand to be counted. Showing in favor of the motion is Councillor Bowman, Councillor Medeiros, Mayor Jeffrey, Councillor Dillon, Councillor Sprovieri, and Councillor Moore. All opposed to the motion, please stand to be counted. Showing opposed to the motion is Councillor Gibson, Councillor Miles, Councillor Fortini, Councillor Paleshi, and Councillor Willems. The motion carries 6-5.
Okay, Councillor Miles, did you want to speak on another issue?
Motions, Madam Mayor, that I'd like to present. One of them was in regards to our tax-free exempt status that was raised.
Sorry?
One is in regards to the 1/3 tax-free exempt status.
Yep.
That has been raised. Do you want me to present that now?
Sure.
Okay.
Can you tell us where it is that you're speaking to?
Yeah, I'm speaking to page 17 of 23 in the recommendation part.
Mr. Clerk, are we using this F1? We're using F1. If you could use that as a guide for council. So I think you're talking about page 10.
Yeah, 17 of 23.
All right.
So 17 of 23 is a resolution that speaks to council getting rid of the 1/3 tax exempt status. And I can tell you as a member of council, this has been a bone of contention for as long as as I've been on council. It's difficult to ascertain exactly what our salary and wages are, and it gets reported differently all the time. I do think it's important that we get rid of it. When I took a closer look at the motion, I did have some concerns because the motion does say that the motion in itself makes members of council equal. So whatever wage members of council were getting before the one-third tax exempt status was voted on, they would get the same net pay. So, but my concern is, Madam Mayor, that we may end up as members of council being the highest paid councillors in Canada. And after going through what we went through last election, we don't know the exact numbers and we don't know the comparators. So I have an amendment to the motion that says that the motion regarding the one-third tax exempt status, final paragraph, be amended to read, as long as the amount does not exceed the compensation paid to councillors in the City of Mississauga. And I feel that the City of Mississauga is a good comparator for members of council. I have no idea what they make, and I'm not even quite sure what we'll be making. But what I do know is that I don't want to be ranked the highest paid councillors in Canada. And right now, members of Brampton Council represent 2 wards, so they have twice the number of residents that they represent than most of the Mississauga councillors. And we have 1 staff person for every 2 councillors, and I believe they have 3. So I still think that this is good value. It gets rid of the one-third tax-free, and it keeps us so that we are not the highest paid in Canada. So it's really a friendly amendment. Again, it gives us the opportunity to take a look at what the impact is on the wages. And for the members of the public, we had to pass the resolution to get the one-third tax-free in the calendar year prior to it being implemented. So even though we had to go through the process, it actually doesn't happen until 2016, but the decision had to be made now. So I think that's important for people to understand. We made the decision, and the numbers still have to be clarified.
So I think the clerks need some clarification on the language, but I got 3 other speakers, and maybe that can happen in the course of the debate. Councillor Spovieri. Do you have a second?
Yes,
yeah, there's a
Councillor
second.
14 seconded.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor, and I do support Councillor Miles' motion. I think that, and I have to say that even though we always believed around this table that having this one-third tax-free benefit was actually it was always a benefit to the municipality and the taxpayers. And that's why the past councils always, year after, election after election, it was supported. It shows, as Councillor Miles also indicated, our Brampton Council, we are the leanest and the least expensive council in the whole GTA. As was mentioned, we have 1 assistant assisting 2 councillors, whereas all the other municipalities have 2 assisting 1. And so when you do the math and you figure out the extra cost of having these extra assistants in our office, we are the cheapest council in the GTA. And so that means that we have to do a lot more in our daily jobs than the councillors in Mississauga and Vaughan and Toronto. And that's how we were able to justify this one-third tax break, I guess, or free, what I call it. But, people see that as a huge benefit to us. I don't believe it ever was a benefit to us. I think that we had to do more with less, and we were able to justify it. Now, I don't have a problem with, certainly I don't want to have the reputation as being the highest paid counselors in the GTA or the country, so just to make things very transparent and make it look like we're not, then I will support Councillor Miles' motion, and so people don't think that we're a bunch of greedy counselors around here. Thank you.
Thank you, and I also don't want to be known as that either, but I have a fear that we might get the reverse here. We all know that the total package, we know, the total package for Mississauga councillors includes a much higher car allowance than what we get. I think it's in the range of $18,000 to $20,000. So we could end up finding out that it would increase, and we don't want to do that.
No.
So I think what we probably should do, and I know we had talked about the staff setting up and interviewing for a citizens group to review our wages, and we'll probably be, because this doesn't come in effect until next year, we have the time to do this. We might be better off to refer that to that group and have staff start to interview for a citizens group, because if you remember at the beginning of this term, we said we didn't want to get into a position where we were interviewing for people that would be reviewing our own. So we set it back to staff to do that. We haven't, I don't believe staff have started that interview process. So those citizens aren't in place yet. But that may be better to send it to them to look at the compensation, because there's a lot more to this than just our wages here, and it affects the bands that we're on too. So if you want to go compare with Mississauga and then find out what Mississauga gets, I think it's $18,000 to $20,000 car allowance, it could increase our wages. Don't want to do that. None of us want that. So I would suggest we refer this back to a citizens committee to be set up by the staff to review our compensation. And that might be a better tactic to find out. And I also want staff to report back so the citizens know what the cost of this is. Because there's a large cost to the citizens for us taking away this 1/3 tax-free. And I don't know if staff have that on hand now, but we purposely made the decision years ago, those of us around will remember, not to do it because it was a cost to the taxpayers. I believe it was in the $360,000 range, and staff can explain better why, but there is a cost to us taking away the 1/3 tax-free, not to us, to the taxpayers.
So Councillor Gibson, you're right, this is a little more complicated because the following page speaks to the mayor and council wage freeze on the next page, which does have an impact, so I'm going to go to the clerk to clarify as to what their recommendation would be on this motion.
So through you, Mayor Jeffrey, yes, the clause 28, which is on the next page, 18 of 23, speaks, if council were to approve that tonight, speaks to freezing immediately the mayor and members of council's salaries. The motion that Councillor Miles has moved an amendment to speaks to getting rid of the 1/3 tax-free, which is clause 27. That would not take effect until January 1st, 2016. And if Councillor Gibson is moving a referral, it is appropriate that there is a council compensation committee that has been established by this council. It hasn't been appointed to yet, and staff have the resumes that they're going through in terms of the applicants. So it would be appropriate to refer that to that committee to provide recommendations back to this council that could still be implemented in time for when the 1/3 tax-free exemption status falls off as of January 1st, 2016.
Councillor Miles, did you want to respond?
Yes, I do, because the way the motion is now, the motion that is going forward, we don't know where that places us. And I don't want us to be passing any motion or referring any motion that puts us at the top of the wage scale. Mississauga is a good comparator. If we're going to move forward with this, let's pick our comparator, and that's what will. It can still be referred to the compensation committee, but not with the motion as it reads today without that amendment.
So are we referring both 27 and 28? Is that the advice, Mr. Clerk?
Well, I'm referring 20. I don't want to refer 27. I'd like to vote on it, and then if you want to send it to the council compensation committee, that's fine and dandy.
I think the advice we're getting is that it's until you have the numbers and what the impact of the freeze is, you don't have all the information to make a decision. I think that's what we're hearing.
So none of this moves forward then?
Until after that committee, and you still have time to implement it before the 2016.
When do we have to do this, Mr. Fay? I thought we had to do it now.
The resolution is to take effect as of January 1st, 2016.
I understand, but I thought we had to pass it 1 year in advance of...
Mr. Honeybourne?
Madam Mayor, the way the legislation reads is council needs to pass the resolution in the year prior to the year that's going to take effect. So it's any time in the year prior to the year. It could be November, December.
So I think it still meets the spirit of what you're intending, so we can
Okay.
refer it, if you're okay with that.
That's fine.
Do we want to refer both of those things, or just 27? 27 and 28, or just 27? Just 27? Okay, all right. Councillor Dillon, do you want to speak on this issue?
Yes, I have a question actually. When we're calculating it, do we take into account both the car allowance and the actual salary? Like, what is how do we calculate that? Yes? Oh, we both then? Yeah.
Okay. Councillor Gibson, did you want to speak any more on this issue? No? Councillor Willens?
Yeah, I think the item 28, though, I think we kind of agreed to freeze for 2015, do we not? Okay, so that's staying in there?
Yeah,
Freeze,
I'm
okay.
just asking if they wanted to extract
Okay, as
anything
long as
else,
that's
because
staying
they all
in,
have an
that's fine.
impact.
I'm good with everything else. That's
Okay, all right. So, any more speakers on this issue? So, a referral on the issue of the one-third tax exempt status has been called for by Councillor Miles and seconded by, is this for Councillor Fortini? Is that what I'm reading here? Okay. Should have been a physician. Hard to read your spelling. All those in favor? All those opposed? That's carried. Councillor Miles, did you want to speak on another issue? Yeah. Okay.
Madam Mayor, that I'd like to present to you, and I would refer you to the report dated April the 7th, and it's the 2015 Operating and Capital Budget Report. So if you could turn to page 7, Appendix A, and it's the report EHX. EHX is the other report on front of you. This one?
Which one? What's on the top of it?
It's the report by Mr. Honeybourne, and it's the overview of the operating and capital budget.
Yep.
Okay, so the motion that I have is going to speak to Appendix A. So the motion that I have is, whereas the City of Brampton is attempting to keep its budget impact on the taxpayers to the lowest possible increase, and whereas Interim Auditor General McCarter referenced a high staff-to-tax revenue ratio, whereas the 2015 budget as presented allows for an increase in 179 staff persons, and whereas 79 positions are required by Brampton Transit to continue to improve our public transit system, and whereas there is a budget request for 100 new positions across all other departments of the city, and whereas staff are starting a staff rationalization study due to the reorganization, therefore be it resolved that the 2015 budget as presented be reduced by 10 persons, those positions to be prioritized and identified by the executive leadership team, and further that the staffing, wages, and benefits portion of the budget be reduced by $1 million to $17,539,000, and you'll see that on page 7, Appendix A. So basically what it does, Madam Mayor, is I think sort of a good average when you look at wages, benefits, and everything all in, you're looking at $100,000 per employee. So that's where I'm getting the $1 million to reduce the budget by 10 staff persons. And I think the staff themselves, they all presented really good cases for the positions that they needed within their departments. And I don't want to predetermine which are more of a priority than others. So there's still 90 new positions in this budget. I'd like to reduce it by 10, let staff determine where they are, and reduce the budget by $1 million. I think that's going to bring us below 4%. I hope it does. So I'll pass that to you.
Councillor Fortini.
No, I'm putting in another motion. I'm fine with
Oh,
that.
okay. Do you want to see this? We will eventually get through voting on the budget, but if people want to speak about specific issues, they can.
So through you, Mayor Jeffrey, if I understand the intent of the councillor's motion, it really is, this staff report, E1, has a series of recommendations on page 1, 2, or page 2 and 3. So I think this is an amendment to staff recommendation 3, that council approve the 2015 operating budget as amended and summarized in Appendix A of this report, subject to the following amendment, which is the reduction of 10 persons, those positions to be prioritized and identified by the executive leadership team, and further that the staffing, wages, and benefits portion of the budget be reduced by an equivalent amount of $1 million to $17.539 million.
All right. Any other questions or comments on this particular issue? Councillor Moore.
Thank you. Just thinking this through, Councillor Miles, the recommendations for the staff increases in this budget are for specific purposes. What we weren't able to, or what we didn't ask through this budget process was how many staff were we losing through attrition this year? So where I'm going with this is, if 50 people are retiring, I'll just pick a number, that's 50 people that technically we would be replacing them plus adding 179 or 100 people. Would you give staff the flexibility to decide to, through the, if you're losing 50, to replace 40 because the positions identified in this budget are specific to a capital program or an initiative? So those positions, I think, have been rationalized through the process. So I don't know whether that requires, but what you're trying to do is, because they would have been new hires, we'll just say reduce the new hires by 10 and save $1 million through attrition. Does that make any sense to staff? Okay.
Okay, any other speakers on this issue? So do you want me to read it again, or is everybody, okay. So the item on E1 is that under the operating budget, the council approved the 2015 operating budget as amended and summarized in Appendix A, which is what Councillor Miles spoke about. But in this case, Councillor Miles is amending item 3, that the 2015 budget be presented to reduce by 10 persons, and they be prioritized and identified by the executive leadership team, and further that staffing and wages and benefits portion of the budget be reduced by $1 million. Sure. I've got one more speaker. Councillor Dillon?
I think it's a, yeah, I do think it's a noble motion. Cutting spending is always good, but I just don't know what the ramifications of it will be. How it will affect some of the departments affected or the divisions affected, and will it cause issues later on? I in principle agree with it, but I couldn't support it because I don't know too much about what's going to happen after that. So I couldn't support it without further information. I just want to let that be known as well. Saving $1 million is great, but will it cost us more later? Will we have to hire even more just to make up for anything we've lost? So I just want to get that out there. I think the staff has put recommendations forward. I don't think they presented anything over budget. I think everybody tried to stay within the parameters. So maybe staff could possibly let us know some of the effects of reducing that 100 to 90. I'm sure they would have loved to add 150 or 120, but I want to know how we came up to that 100 and what the effects will be before we make a decision like this. I think we're just making a pretty rash decision, I guess. Can anybody answer the question?
Chief Simmons?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I'll start it out. The budgets put forward by the departments did rationalize the staff requests. And in fact, they were lower than what we had originally contemplated bringing to council. However, what's being requested will require that the executive leadership team, under the guidance of the acting CEO, will in fact do that. It's an arbitrary number, but we'll certainly go through the exercise. What we come back with is hard to. I wouldn't want to speculate on it. Certainly, if it's $1 million that council is looking for, we would certainly look at that. But it appears right now that the direction is heading towards find that $1 million through a reduction in the staff requests. But as I said, the original budget proposals brought forward by each department were brought with some careful thought and consideration given to those staffing requests. But as you said, Councillor Dillon, what would those effects be? And we'll have to include that as part of our analysis.
I think it's symbolically, it's great. I think council will look great in doing it. It'd be good for the headlines, but I don't know, again, what you said, what the outcome will be. So, again, I couldn't support it right away. I need further information. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Miles?
This is not symbolic. This isn't a symbolic gesture, and it's not for the headlines. We were told by the city manager that through the reorganization, rationalization study, that staffing could be reduced by 12%. We haven't gone, we did get an amended report, but staff had already told us that they were able to reduce. So if you can reduce, and I didn't want to get into this.
You should have brought this information for us to see as well.
I'm not going to allow the debate. No debate.
No, for now.
Sorry, no debate. Councillor Miles,
It was
you have
part
the
of the
floor.
budget process, I'm sorry. And I know it's been long and arduous, but we were told that staffing could be reduced. We have attrition, we have a recommendation in here that they're going to look at a staff rationalization. We're giving 90 new staff. We could have went and cherry-picked, okay, reduce here, reduce here. There's positions in this budget that I don't agree with, that I question. But I would prefer that senior staff who are responsible for the operational side of the budget, if we say as the policymakers, we're going to allow you 90 new staff, we want you to reduce it by 10, then that's their job to reduce it by 10. And this is not symbolic. It will bring us below the 4, I believe it'll bring us below the 4% increase. And I would sincerely like to see us below 4%. We are still approving 169 new staff persons in this budget. I've sectioned out transit because I don't want to impact transit. So I don't think it's unreasonable. We set up the budget structure, so we were just receiving things. We didn't really get a chance to start getting into debating how to bring the budget down, and this is one way.
Thank you. Councillor Moore.
Okay, I guess the more conversation I hear, the less confident I feel that staff have got clear direction to achieve the $1 million and the 10-person complement reduction through attrition. As I said, I think the positions in the budget have been rationalized, if I can use that word, because we have approved a staff rationalization review. It seems to me that if we have 50 people retiring this year, and I use that number because I think that's how many retired last year, so I think comparatively it's not an unrealistic number. If 50 people are retiring this year, that a full rationalization take place before those positions are replaced. So the overall staff complement would be reduced by 10, achieved through a rationalization of the positions that were vacated through attrition. That's not what the motion says, And everybody's talking about the new positions and how they don't agree with some of them in the budget. I think staff, whether we want to add the 179 for 100 plus the transit drivers of 79 or not, they've been rationalized, gone through that process through the budget, and we've approved them. So I think those positions need to be there in order for the budget request and the budget approval to work. But I do think that there is an opportunity to review all those positions. So I don't know how we have to change the motion because I don't have it written in, no, it's not in front of us, written, but that staff be directed to achieve an overall staff reduction of 10. I'm assuming that's within the non-unionized group, or just, you're not, just leaving it open, but that, and that they be achieved, those $1 million and an overall staff complement of 10 be achieved this year, and that staff have the flexibility to achieve that through attrition, through a staff rationalization.
Councillor Moore, I think you have clarification. I think you,
okay.
Do you need to still speak to the mover?
No.
Because I'm getting more speakers, the more people talk about it. Councillor Dillon.
I just want to clarify. I think, again, I'm not against less staff, but what I think, what I was trying to say is that I think it would have been, I don't want to use the word, I think it would have been better if we had some more rationalization behind the motion. If we could see, if we had a clear idea of what exactly would be cut. I think if we had that beforehand, and it was brought to us and we can actually see it, I think we could justify a decision in cutting 10. Like I said, I think to what Chief Simmons was saying as well, we would need to look into it more. So rather than make the decision now, again, I'm not against cutting the 10 position, but what I was trying to say is I'd like to see some more information on the effects of it. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Chief Simmons, can you provide some clarity before I go to my next two speakers?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll certainly try. There was also a Budget Committee recommendation around a service review. And in fact, it'll be coming up in a little bit through Councillor Medeiros. And it may help Council with this discussion that that actually be undertaken and that we proceed with that plan with sights on dealing with this number. Because we're hearing that there is an initial set of numbers brought forward by staff through this budget to increase the complement, to deal with the various services, ensure that we've got continuity, and also allow for some growth. But then it's migrated towards a discussion around attrition, which would be helpful. But that service review, I think, would perhaps be the best starting point for that discussion. And as you'll hear later, we contemplate bringing that plan for council to discuss by September of this year. I just think that it's dangerous territory to look at the reduction of staff based on the budget discussions that we've had, because there will be service impacts, and it's not the kind of thing that we could just quickly do. If it's being left to the ELT to look at, we would want to probe deeply, and quite frankly would mean looking back into our budget. So it's our recommendation that service review be really the impetus for a reduction in staff numbers, if council wishes to head in that direction.
Thank you. Councillor Bowman.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I agree with both Councillor Moore and Councillor Miles. I think I don't know about the numbers of head count, whether it's attrition or whether it's new bodies, but I think $1 million is a good number to reach for. And I mean, judging by having almost 450 people on the sunshine list, I would guess some of those may be retiring soon, and you know, a couple of those, 3 or 4 of those, is going to be a nice chunk of that money if we leave that to attrition. But I agree that I think we can cut some dollars from the budget, but I don't know whether that's people, 10 people, whether it's 6 people, whether it's positions. But I would like to see a cut in the budget.
Councillor Gibson.
Yeah, I think
I think Councillor Bowman may not be, what I was going to say is, I think we're better off just to say $1 million than pick up positions. My question would be, what would $1 million do to this increase to staff? Is it going to bring it down below the 6%? Or the 4% plus the 2?
Mr. Honeyborn?
At the end of the day, where would we be?
Madam Mayor, we've done some rough, quick calculations. And it would show that instead of 4.07 for the operating component of the budget increase, it would be 3.79. The total budget impact for operating with the region and the city combined would be 2% rather than 2.12, which is below the rate of inflation. And the total overall tax bill impact would be 3.26% instead of 3.38%.
What is the city's portion, including the 2%?
5.79%.
5.79. Thank you.
Councillor Miles?
Well, you have the motion, so I don't know exactly what the words are. The intent of my motion was to reduce the budget by $1 million and to be able to reduce the staff positions by 10. If those staff positions are found by attrition, if those staff positions are found by a service review, as far as I'm concerned, the senior management team, executive management team are the best ones to determine where they find the reduction in the staff positions. I think $1 million is a good amount to reduce by, and I do think that we're not going to see a reduction in service. These are new positions, and so it's in support of the municipality's growth. We're not impacting transit. We have a great transit system, and 90 positions across the municipalities I think is still generous, and it's still meeting the goals that we set. So I don't have any qualms about recommending a reduction in 10, and we're back at the table in a few months anyway.
So before I go to Chief Simmons, can I just clarify? I think I heard you say that you didn't care how it occurred, but you wanted to reduce the budget by $1 million. So do you want to just say, therefore, be it resolved that the 2015 budget be reduced by $1 million?
Staff and wages.
Staff and wages? Do you want to just leave it that, rather than saying the 10 people?
Yeah, the staff and wage portion could be reduced by $1 million. That's fine. That's it. That would be the intent.
Councillor, Chief Simmons?
No, Madam Mayor, thank you. That's clear.
Okay. Any more speakers on this issue? So essentially, the motion is therefore be resolved that 2015 budget as presented, reduce staffing and wages benefits portion of the budget by $1 million. And I believe a recorded vote has been requested.
Recorded vote's been requested. All in favor of the motion as presented, please stand to be counted. Showing in favor of the motion is Councillor Moore, Councillor Willens, Councillor Paleshi, Councillor Sprovieri, Mayor Jeffrey, Councillor Medeiros, Councillor Bowman, Councillor Fortini, Councillor Miles, Councillor Gibson. All opposed, please stand to be counted. Showing opposed to the motion is Councillor Dillon. The motion carries 10-1.
Councillor Fortini, you were on my list. You had an issue?
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Yeah.
About page 1623, I don't know if we could talk about that. No, we have to. About the office of the mayor and the council.
Yep.
So I have no problem with it says there, just that I wanted to change something, saying that I want to put in a motion that regarding the 2015 budget for the office for the mayor and council to be amended to add in the area of council to involve the process development job description, interview, and choosing of our own contract staff member or by secondment. That's the only thing I wanted to add on it.
So I thought it's passed because I'm not sure what you've done to change it.
That's in the 5, the additional 5 staff, 1 staff per additional 2 counselors.
Okay. I'm not sure this is, has any kind of impact on the budget. I think it's more of just a direction to staff.
Direction, just a
I think it's just direction to staff that the area counselors be involved in the process of developing job descriptions, interviews, and choosing of their contract staff members, which I think it isn't contrary to anything here, so.
Yeah, but also says the comments on it, so we have our own choice, we get to choose.
I think you're going to have to deal with the HR. I don't know the issues on this issue. So I think what you've done is ask for direction to deal with this issue and have some participation in the hiring of the staff. Any questions on that particular issue? All those in favor? All those opposed? That's carried. Councillor Medeiros, did you have something?
Yes, thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. Just regarding the recommendation for service delivery review. So there's a motion. I'm not sure if the city clerk can put that on the screen.
Is it anywhere in this motion? Do you know where it is originally?
What page exactly?
So, Mayor Jeffrey, if I understand Councilor Medeiros, he's moving an amendment to Clause 16, which is on page... the bottom of page 10 of 23 and the top of page 11 of 23 to effectively, and the motion's put on the screen, to delete clauses, subclauses 3 and 4 and replace with new subclauses 3, 4, and 5.
Okay. All right. Does everybody know where we are in this? So on page 10 and 11, there's a change to recommendation 1, 3, and 4 to new 3, 4, and 5. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. Okay. And essentially, one of the major features of the motion is that we get a concrete plan by September 30th, 2015. Because of the previous language, it just said review by 2017. I think it was vague. And this way, there's some hard deadlines for us to work with.
Okay. Any questions, comments? All those in favor? All those opposed? That's carried. Anybody else have any other motions? Any business? Or we can start voting on our agenda? No recess. If you go through the motions, you get out of here faster, right? So, do you want me to go through all of the issues? So we go. I don't know if we can, Mr. Clerk. We can't do that, can we? Can we move everything else all at once? An omnibus?
If that's the will of council, although a number of members have declared conflicts, so there may have to be some separate votes on separate motions. So my recommendation for a complete understanding by all members of council on what we're voting on is we go through all the recommendations set out in F1 methodically, page by page.
Okay.
That would be my recommendation.
It's safer. So we're going to go through the Budget Committee recommendations page by page for voting purposes. Where necessary, council can take separate and/or recorded votes based on member requests or declared conflicts of interest. Second, a motion to consider item E1, a new staff report from Finance and its 2015 budget recommendations for the current and capital budget. Third, a motion to consider item E2, the new staff report from Public Services regarding the Powerade, basketball floor, and city-funded capital items. So, are we at item G? Oh, F1? So F1 is the Budget Committee for March 30th, 31st, and April 1st. Do we have a motion?
Mayor Jeffrey, the first set of motions, just on pages 1 and 2 and 3, are, for lack of a better word, procedural motions from the Budget Committee. So they're receiving presentations from staff, delegations from various members of the public, and community groups. So that will take you from recommendations BC 001 2015 all the way through to BC 021 2015. But there are some members of council that have declared a conflict of interest. Councillor Bowman declared a conflict of interest with respect to Carabram, which is item recommendation BC 015, 2015. So we can take a separate vote on that one.
Okay.
If Councillor Bowman were to leave during that vote.
Okay. Is he the only person who's going to have a conflict in that?
With respect to, declared conflict with respect to Carabram, yes.
Okay. So, shall we take a vote on that now? And then you can leave and then we can vote on?
Now, vote on that first?
Yeah. We'll do that.
So just on BC 015, 2015.
So on BC 005-2015, is that the right number?
011.
All those in favor? All those opposed? That's carried. Is that it?
Councillor Bowman can come back.
Okay. Somebody tell him to come back.
Councillor Bowman, you can return to your seat. And then the next set of motions would just be voting on recommendations BC 001 through to BC 021, which are the procedural motions just to receive delegations.
Okay. All those in favor of receiving those delegations? All those opposed? That's carried.
Mayor Jeffrey, page 6 of 23 is the next set of substantive motions dealing with the 2015 budget, starting with BC 022 and a number of clauses. So the first, and perhaps I suggest we go through page by page. So the first set of recommendations deal with the office for the Chief Operating Officer.
Excluding the ethnic community, I guess that's another item.
That would be on page 8.
Yeah.
That would be clause 8, and that would be as amended.
Yeah. So all those in favor of the motions under the office of the Chief Operating Officer? As amended? Thank you. All opposed? That's carried.
10, 11. The next set of recommendations are on page 8 of 23, which are the Corporate Services Department, and specifically clauses 10 through 14.
Councilor Medeiros, are you still on the list, or is that from before?
Oh, sorry, my apologies.
All those in favor? All those opposed? That's carried.
The next set of motions are on page 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and part of 15, and deal with general government. The first motion is the infrastructure levy, which is clause 15.
Any comments or questions? We're on page 9 of 23. All those in favor? All those opposed? That's carried.
The next motion is clause 16, which is the service delivery review and non-union remuneration, as amended by Councillor Medeiros' motion. Non-union.
Non-union. All those in favor? All those opposed? That's carried. You can come back.
The next clause is clause 17, which is the 2015 general government budget as be approved, excluding two components: provisions for wage increases for fire, ATU, non-union and part-time employees, and part 2, community grants and subsidies.
So I think there's a few of us that we need to leave on that one.
So this would be the general government budget except for wage increases and community grants. And then we'll take a separate vote on the wage increase, which is clause 18, and a separate vote on community grants, which is clause 19 as amended.
Okay. So, Mr. Clerk, I think we just want to make sure that the people, I think the transit people have to leave at the same time, and so can you tell us what part we're at now?
So as I understand the conflicts of interest, clause 17, all members of council can vote on because it's excluding wage increases and community grants.
Okay.
Take a vote on that.
All those in favor? All those opposed? That's carried.
The next clause, clause 18, is specific to the wage provisions, and those members that declared conflict with respect to relations that are work in various divisions for the compensation portion should exclude themselves from this vote.
So I'm excluding, and my vice chair will?
Yep. Through the chair, yes, this includes non-union wage provisions as well. So we just take a vote on clause 18.
Okay. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Okay, the members can return to their seats. The next clause is clause 19, which is the portion of the general government budget as it relates to community funding and subsidies. There was a previous motion introduced by Councillor Moore that carried, which is not contrary and is not an amendment, but it's an additional or companion motion. So there is one member of council, two members of council that declared conflict with respect to community groups, Councillor Miles and Councillor Bowman.
All those in favor of Clause 9? Sorry, Councillor Blushy?
Going back to dealing with this portion of it, can I get a clarification? And I don't know if I should be asking this now or wait to the end, but I need a clarification on your amendment to Carabram specifically. My question is this time? Through the mayor? Is this the appropriate time to ask that question?
I think you can ask for clarification, yeah.
Okay, great. So if Carabram comes back to Councillor Miles and I within like a week or so, and we find some efficiencies, we can still look at having Carabram this year, correct?
Yes, all you're approving in this is the funding pots, which are fairly close to what they were last year. So the funding is there. You were charged with the task of sitting down with the group and finding efficiencies in a delivery model.
Thank you, Council.
Okay, any other questions? All those in favor of Section 19? All those opposed? That's carried.
The next...
Our members can come back now?
Yes, members can return. The next set of recommendations are on page 15 and 16, which is the Planning and Infrastructure Services Department, clauses 20 to 21.
Questions or comments? All those in favor from 20 to 21?
Sorry, 20 to 22. My apologies.
Sorry, 22. 20 to 22. All those in favor? All those opposed? That's carried.
The next group is clauses 23 and 24 on page 16, which is the Office of the Chief Administrative Officer.
Any questions? All those in favor? All those opposed? That's carried.
The next group is the Office of the Mayor and Council, which is on page 16, 17, and a portion of 18. Clause 25 is the recommendation from the committee as amended by Councillor Fortini's motion.
Any other comments, questions? All those in favor? All opposed? That's carried.
Clause 26 is just approving the capital budget for the Office of the Mayor and Council.
Any questions or comments? All those in favor? All those opposed? That's carried.
Clause 27 was referred to the Council Compensation Committee along with the amendment from Councillor Miles. Clause 28 is the Mayor and Council wage freeze to be effective immediately and to be reviewed by Council as part of the 2016 budget process.
All those in favor? All those opposed? That's carried.
The next set of recommendations are the Public Services Department, 29, 30, and 31, 32, and 33, and I'll suggest we take separate votes on 34 because of some conflicts that have been declared. So if we can vote on clauses...
From 29 all the way to 33.
And 35 at the same time.
And 35. All those in favor? All those opposed? That's carried. Now we're voting on 34.
Clause 34. So just for further clarity, there were 4 members of council, I recall, that declared conflicts with respect to compensation portions of either the Transit Division budget or the Recreation Division budget. So 34, if council wants to take a separate vote, they can take a vote on Clause 34 with the added wording with the exception of the staff compensation portions of the Transit Division and Recreation Division budgets, and then council can take separate votes on those specific portions of the budget. So all members of council can remain for this first vote because it will be with the exception of the staff compensation portions of the Transit Division and the Recreation Division budget.
Okay. All those in favor? All those opposed? It's carried. And now we'll vote on
the next vote will be what will be 34, Clause 34A, the staff compensation portion of the Transit Division budget as contained in the 2015 current budget for the Public Services Department.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Thank you. The members can return to their seats. And the final clause on this would be 34B, which would be the staff compensation portion of the Recreation Division budget as contained in the 2015 current budget for the Public Services Department, and Councillor Fortini had declared a conflict on that one.
All those in favor of 34? All opposed? That's carried.
The last set of recommendations are pages 21 to 23, and our committee recommendations BC 025 through to BC 034.
What are we voting on again?
BC
025.
025 to BC 034.
Any comments or questions? All those in favor? All those opposed? That's carried.
Mayor Jeffrey, so the next matter before council is the staff report E1, which was distributed at tonight's meeting, which is the report from finance entitled 2015 Operating Capital Budget, as amended by Councillor Miles' motion.
Okay. Any comments or questions? It's moved by Councillor Medeiros, seconded by Councillor Moore. This is the motion E1 that's amended. This was the motion where we excluded the $1 million as well. Item 3. So item 3 has been changed. That's the only change on there. Okay. Any comments or questions? We're voting on it.
For the entire thing, or?
For that report. Okay. All those in favor? As amended. All those opposed? That's carried.
The last substantive motion is the staff report E2, which is on the Powerade Center, the basketball floor, and other capital improvements. There was a report provided to this council meeting with a number of recommendations in it.
Any comments or questions? It's moved by Councillor Bowman, seconded by Councillor Miles, that the report be received, that we undertake a business case analysis on the potential acquisition, and that city staff continue the practice of including capital requests for the Powerade Center in the development presentation of the annual budget. Any comments or questions? Seeing none. All those in favor? All those opposed? That's carried. We have the following correspondence to the special council meeting. We had 2 individuals that wrote letters that are here from Mr. Harmsworth and Mr. Startup. It's moved by Councillor Willen, seconded by Councillor Pelletier. All those in favor for receipt? All those opposed? That's carried. Can we have the public question? We're at the public question period. This is item H. This is where we invite members of the public to come forward to the podium, ask any questions about any decision made by council at today's meeting. There's a 15-minute limit for all questions and answers. Are there any questions from the public about any decisions made at this special budget meeting? If so, come down.
I'm not as fast as I used to be.
It's okay. I just want you to come down in one piece.
Twice as dangerous.
Yeah.
I need a clarification on what I had spoken on earlier on. Is that possible?
Sure.
Okay. The 2% infrastructure levy. Could you explain where it's coming from, who's paying it, how it's going to show up, or
Mr. Honeyburn?
there's something missing here I don't quite grasp.
Madam Mayor, there's 2 components to the final tax levy for the city of Brampton. One is operating budget requirement for day-to-day operations, and an additional 2% tax levy on the base budget as well. So we are now sitting at about 5.79, I think, or something like that, instead of 6.07. But it's a 2% levy on the operating budget for infrastructure maintenance.
Where is that going to show up on our property tax bills?
Madam Mayor, it will not. The province dictates what we put on our tax bills, and we have to follow their rules, so it will not be shown separately.
What I'm trying to get at here is this is for infrastructure, for all of the city, for roads, bridges, whatever. This is only the taxpayers of Brampton that pay that.
So I think, Mr. Estrada, we had some conversations about this issue, and I think we got some advice from Mr. McCarter, the Auditor General, that it would be helpful if we tracked those dollars and showed how they were being spent. And I think that there was an interest by this council to try and follow that advice. So
Madam Mayor.
we'll try.
The point I'm trying to make is where that's coming from. Am I the only taxpayer, you guys, that are going to pay for infrastructure? Pardon?
So we're not going to get a debate here going. I think you have an answer, and
yeah, the answer is yes. It's just the taxpayers are going to be paying for infrastructure.
Any other individuals that want to come down and ask a question? Come on down.
Madam Mayor, just as a clarification, did I understand that there's been no money set aside for a possible trial this year for the Inzola suits? Do I understand that? In other words, you know, if we go to trial, we know that there's a lot of additional cost. And so my understanding, what I've heard, is that there's no provision for any of that.
Speaking to the budget, there was no line item in the budget speaking to that issue.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing not, we're at the bylaws, I think. Moved by Councilor Medeiros, second by Councilor Pelletier, that the following bylaw before council at a special meeting of April 8th be given the required number of readings taken by the mayor and the city clerk, the corporate seal affixed thereto, to confirm the proceedings of our special council meeting held April 8th. All those in favor? All those opposed? That's carried. And our last motion, that the council do now adjourn to meet again for a regular meeting of council on Wednesday, April 22nd at 7 p.m. or at the call of the mayor, moved by Councilor Willens and seconded by Councilor Bowman. All in favor? All opposed? That's carried. Thank you, council. Thank you, Brampton. This meeting is adjourned. Please enjoy the rest of your evening and have a safe trip home.